Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. I hope you're all having a really nice night tonight. It's good to be back. I was only gone for really not too long, really like a week. But people started asking where I was. Apparently there was a thread on Reddit asking where I was. Apparently I just died. But yeah, I'm back, I suppose. And it's really good to be back. To be entirely honest with you, I've had a lot of content that I've been trying to catch up on. And so I've even deactivated me Twitter just to try and really just catch up with the amount of work that I have to do. Unfortunately, I've been placed under a little bit more stress because of, I won't go into too many details and I certainly won't be mentioning names, but the university that I go to, which my supervisor, I'll use the right terminology, decided to take redundancy at, has been causing us some issues that I need to resolve. As I apply for more universities as well, and trying to find a suitable supervisor in my field is actually really quite difficult because I am yet to meet another Hegelian arguing for animal rights at all. Never mind someone who can judge both animal rights, Hegelianism, and really what I'm going into is the philosophy of nature and our responsibility towards all sentient beings from a Hegelian perspective. And so there are very few supervisors who can really unfortunately supervise that role. So kind of in the situation where I don't know if I'm going to have to change my PhD just to get accepted by someone. I've reached out to some really quite big names and stuff, but the problem is like I've just gone back. That's too far away from my research and things like that. So right now, so I took some time out to catch up on some work and hopefully resolve the situation with my university. But I'm back. So if you have a question to ask us about philosophy and you want to know something about philosophy and I can hopefully answer it, then this is what this stream is about. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. And yes, I have had a haircut. Thanks for noticing. Yeah. What's up, man? How you doing? Hello, Hamja. Penis monkey. Sunland is better. At what? Being poor. I'm allowed to say that because I'm from here. No, Sunland is shit though. Like not in a way that I think anything bad of the people of Sunland, because actually I think this whole, let's be honest, right? The divide between Sunland and Newcastle actually dates back to the English Civil War, in which Newcastle was on the side of the king and Sunland was parliamentarian. I'll be right back, guys, because apparently there's something going up. Oh, wait a minute. Stream's not up on YouTube. What's going on? Me girlfriend said the same thing. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to end this stream. Are you serious? Oh. Oh. Why? Oh my god. Wait, no. It says it's on YouTube. Wait a minute. Can YouTube see me? Let us know if you can see us on YouTube. Okay. You're on YouTube. Yes. Can you see me on YouTube? It is on YouTube. Okay. We did it, guys. We did it. Okay. I'm glad. This was a team effort. Thank you. Right. Okay. Yes. Okay. YouTube. Okay. Fresh and fit. Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, I was talking about Sunland being so okay. So Sunland, in English history, took the opposing side to Newcastle, during the English Civil War. From what I'm aware, that's where our rivalry first began. There was no real problems with Sunland and Newcastle, bar from the fact that one decided to side with Parliament and one decided to side with the King. So Newcastle decided to side with the King. So I think Sunland won. That's the only thing they've really ever won, isn't it, Sunland? No, no, but I actually don't have any problems with people from Sunland. Beautiful place. It's got like Sunland has like an aroma about it. Yeah. No, I mean, like in all seriousness, I like people from Sunland. I think Sunland's class. I will say it does suffer a lot from poverty, like a lot of places from around here. And that just needs to be resolved. There's also some really fancy places in Sunland right next to the poor places, like Seaham. Why is Seaham so fancy? Like, or what is it, like Merton? Why is Merton so fancy? What's going on there? Just wealth. Tynemouth in like at the opposite side as well. Like you've got like Tynemouth next to Whitley Bay. It's just all crazy, man. Anyway, sorry. Hello, I am King PP. Refresh the YouTube stream code. It's a little behind. I think that, to be entirely honest with you, there's nothing I can do about the YouTube stream being behind the Twitch stream. I think that genuinely comes down to the fact that Twitch has a better codex. Like, I think codex? Yeah, I think encoder. So I don't think there's anything I can actually do about that. I think it's just the speed at which I used to be a monarchist. I genuinely Iola Beyonce boys. I used to be a proper royalist. I was a proper monarchist. I used to believe that no royalty. This is so I really like, this is the thing. I was always socially Labour. I believe in workers' rights and strong unions and things like that. But then I got really, like, to be entirely honest with you, I would say I went more right wing as I became more fragile, if I'm honest, like when I was younger. And it takes a lot to admit this, but like when you're being bullied, for being, let's say, overweight, or you're being bullied for even just being clever, right? Or autistic, or whatever the hell it might be, like you're not fitting in. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they need someone to bully in order to like kind of put themselves on this social hierarchy above you. And you can see that happening. You can see that it's all this game and you're just being used as a means to an end, right? And so you just start thinking like, well, wait a minute. Why are my hands being tied by this institution? I am much bigger and stronger. Why can't I just hit them? And like, obviously the opposing scenario could also happen. Then the big strong person becomes the tyrant, right? And I get that, and I understood that. But then I thought, well, what's wrong with a tyrant? This was me when I was younger. So what's wrong with like being, a king? Like, what's wrong with being the king if the king is a genuinely good king? And so I came into the position that, democracy was fundamentally false. People are idiots, and they'd be better off with a king. I've grown up since that position. I was going through a bad time. Hi, PP. Hope you're well. Thanks, man. I hope you're well too. We can see you. That's so ominous. Hey, how much Heidegger did you have to learn at uni, and how much do you agree with? Honestly, the very little of Heidegger actually learnt at uni. I will say that they probably should have taught more phenomenology. Phenomenology was the last, was one of the last modules we did in third year. So I'm not gonna lie, it like how much Heidegger they expect you to learn is minimal. I would say I got one module, which was only 1/3 Heidegger. It was Heidegger, Husserl, and Levinas. And I would say it was really split mostly between Heidegger and Husserl, but a decent amount on Husserl. And I will say Husserl gives you great insight into Heidegger, because Heidegger's writing directly responding to Husserl. But the amount of Heidegger they actually expect you to learn is just minimal. To be entirely honest with you, I don't think they can expect more from you anyway. You've got a limited amount of time. You've got to write an essay. I would not be expecting anyone even to read Being and Time at uni. Not at all. Too big, too complex. You don't understand what's going on. It's just going to confuse you. If I'm honest, I wouldn't even expect that. I think that either degrees need to be longer so that you can give people enough time to really research these things, or in general, you just have to have lower expectations. And I think that's precisely what they did. I don't think they were wrong, really, for not expecting us to have read like all of Being and Time and stuff like that. And that's just early Heidegger. We didn't even touch late Heidegger. We got told there is a late Heidegger, and we're not going to talk about him. What's your stand on killing predatory animals? Do you think it's morally justified to kill them in some cases or not at all? So I'm actually hoping to have a debate with Vegan Gains, Foot Soldier, Avi, and then we might even have Happy Healthy Vegan moderate. I've been talking to Foot Soldier about it, and well, I disagree a lot with Foot Soldier, like a lot, like as in me and Foot Soldier I agree on very little, and we've talked about this before. He's a capitalist, I'm a socialist, but one of the things we both are deontologists, and I don't think that Vegan Gains' critique of Foot Soldier actually obtained anything other than him just shaming Foot Soldier, calling him a Nazi, and then kicking him from the stream. I think that Vegan Gains doesn't seem to understand. I will say I don't think he understands deontology. I think that, to be entirely honest with you, Vegan Gains and Avi and company, their understanding of ethics is, I think, strange in general. But whatever, man. I'm happy to debate. Hey, just joined your Patreon. I don't know. Oh, it's $5. Oh, it's just under the limit for text-to-speech. So just joined your Patreon, just watching your debate with Superhuman Dance, and was face-palming. Thoughts on consciousness? Thoughts on consciousness? What do you mean, thoughts on consciousness? That's a very big thing to ask. That's like thoughts on reality, right? Like, what do you think? Physicalism, dualism, and panpsychism. Christ. All right, man. Okay, head games. You are playing head games. Okay. Thoughts on consciousness. Okay, so I think that consciousness is a fundamental. Component part of reality. I think that reality is fundamentally built from consciousness that exists individuated between at least two parties within a common domain, which we would normally call matter, which is really just which really doesn't have to have any properties other than being external and observable. So you could imagine I think you could imagine a reality which is a simulation made of simple pieces of information which can be understood, but so long as they can be understood and allow for communication between two parties, I would consider that that reality. So I would say that reality is fundamentally constituted of consciousness and matter, but really matter as a negative sense. I think that reality is really just kind of consciousness. That's what we're going to end up kind of coming to the conclusion of. There is no external reality besides a conscious experience. As I say that, I start touching my nose, and I can't get outside of ideology, guys, Anyway, so physicalism, I think that physicalism is fundamentally flawed. I think that physicalism was really shown to be wrong ever since, really, I mean, I would probably say Descartes and Berkeley. But then if you really want to go into like hammer down on something like empiricism, you could just the Sellers argument against empiricism, which you could watch a Robert Brandom debate on YouTube about, which is really good. Dualism. I think that it depends on the kind of dualism. I'm not convinced by Platonic dualism. I don't think it's a very good position to hold. I think John Locke made some pretty sound arguments against the Platonic position in terms of why we should believe there's a world of forms, or like why we should believe in, let's say, recollection and what recollection would entail, and why we should then argue for a dualistic interpretation of reality. I think that a dualistic Kantian understanding of reality fails to, let's say, a critique given in the style of Meno's paradox. Why should we believe that there is this unknowable thing if we can't know anything about it? There has to be a conceptual link. If there's a conceptual link, then I can know of it. So that I would argue for a Hegelian stance, which is more monistic. Panpsychism, probably more convincing than anything else other than, I would say, idealism. I'm not really convinced by the idea that the fundamental foundations of reality are consciousness, as in conscious, let's say, simples built up into more complex notions of consciousness. I think that I'd probably say that it lacks the unity of a mind. I'd say, so yeah, I'd probably make this more of like a sentientist or a humanist. I think reality is fundamentally explained through the experiences, or only explainable in the experiences of a sentient being. That's what reality is. There is no reality outside of our experiences, conscious or otherwise. I think that, yeah, so I hope that really answers the question. Head games. Thanks for the head games. I haven't seen the 2020 Phil Paper survey. What's the interesting results now? Is everyone an idealist yet? Have I done my job? Question, why do you call animals and children, I presume, it, unless you don't anymore? I do by accident. It's not deliberate. It's just a slip of the tongue. Like, I would argue that animals and children are agents, or like, well, patients, are conscious subjects within the world. And so existentially are continuous indeterminate beings rather than determinate objects. So I don't see them as objects in the same way as, like, I would say a table or a chair or anything like that. They are objects of our experience in the same way as I can see their subjectivity, and I can see their physical behavior in the world. But I would see them as subjects. But that's just a slip of the tongue. You look really good without the beard. I've been getting told that I look better with the beard. Okay. And I think to be entirely honest with you, I think I need to grow the beard back in. Yes. Grow the beard back in. What do I think about free college tuition? I think free college is essential. I think that asking people to pay for the education that they need to function in society is ridiculous. I think that the way that we use college and university and shit like that, if I'm entirely honest with you, is a stopgap for unemployment. And the person who first put us onto that was one of my old lecturers. He's like, it's really just a stopgap so that we don't appear on unemployment statistics. It's also a good way of basically paying us an income whilst guaranteeing some of that money back. So it's rather than giving people benefits, they essentially just pay us an income, which we then give to the universities. Now, I think that is just a really convoluted system. I think you'd be better off just making university free and giving the institutions the money they need to function, but also holding them to certain standards of education. Also, not necessarily over providing useless degrees and stuff like that. I think that unless an individual has any hope of a job, or even unless they want to become self-employed. I mean, to be fair, you can study what you want, but I think that we should really be drilling into people that, look, yeah, you go to university, but like, you're just going to come out and be a manager. And I think that people really need to question whether they feel happy in this economy. They need to understand self-employment. They need to understand business. I mean, I struggle with a lot of these things. Like, I genuinely do. I hate the business side of stuff. It's not what I like doing. I like doing philosophy. But I think that if I had been given basic education in accountancy, in business management, it would have been useful to us. And it would have been more useful to us than, let's say, the stuff I learned in IT, which has not been useful at all. And even though it's supposed to be more useful, the way that they taught IT was pointless. So I'm never going to use Dreamweaver. I'm never going to use it. Who's ever going to use Dreamweaver? Why would they even teach us how to use a specific kind of software when the software itself might just go out of date? It's things like that I just don't even understand. They don't teach you anything about media, really. I guess maybe they didn't understand that YouTube and everything was going to take off the way it did. So I don't know. I remember those things are depressing, that I was strong enough that I could ignore it. For me, my ESD caused me to be convinced people must all be lying. I think I just lost that. You're convinced that everyone was lying. I know what you mean. I think I found in the same thing. I became very pessimistic. I started looking at people as if they were trying to trick us, to bully us. So even people who would kind of olive branch to you when you're a young bullied kid, you start to look with hesitation. Can I trust this person? Is this a setup? Am I just being like lured to the point where I'm going to get laughed at again? And you get on this like kind of like hyper defensive, like I'm not going to be, a slave kind of mentality. And don't get me wrong, I've always been kind of like a fuck off, I'm not going to do what you tell me kind of person, right? Which is probably autism, right? But I'm in year 7. I'm not conforming. On non-uniform days, I'm turning up in like leather jackets and shit, and like spike gloves and stuff like that, because like that's the kind of thing I was interested in. But that definitely would have made things worse. But I didn't even care. Like I felt it was like unjust. Like it was unjust to bend to the will of like the aesthetic will of the people. So I was like, I will not. And then so it ended up just going downhill, really. Is it real jellyfishes in the background? Aren't you vegan now? Yeah, they are real jellyfishes. I captured them myself. These are actually baby man-of-war jellyfishes. I swam for days, actually. Weeks, even. Through rivers in Portugal. Looking for baby man-of-war jellyfish. Just to put in the jar. I thought, wow. Wouldn't it be really cool if I go and light up real jellyfish, which I captured with my bare hands? So yeah, that's where I've been for the last 2 weeks, swimming with jellyfish in the rivers of Portugal. What's the difference between threshold deontology and act utilitarianism, briefly? What's the difference between threshold deontology and act utilitarianism, briefly? Okay, so act utilitarianism is really based upon only thing that it considers is the consequences of an action in relation to the principle of utility and the notion of what is good. So, principle of utility, what is good is the greatest good for the greatest number is the principle from which we should act upon. So, in act utilitarianism, I'm always trying to bring the greatest good for the greatest number, the most utility. That's it, right? Now, how we define good in that scenario is very important. Is it pain and pleasure? Is it, let's say, some sort of non-naturalist notion of good? Is it maybe greater meaning in our lives? How we define good, the meta-ethical question, is very important. Now, I think that it's nonsensical if you are, let's say, a non-realist about ethics, or at least not a relativist or something like that. At least if it's a relative notion of good, at least it has meaning and coherence. But if it's totally subjective, I think it's incoherent. So then we'll start talking about maximizing something which doesn't exist, which cannot exist, which we cannot know, and I think it all falls apart. But if you, let's say it's pain, let's say you take a normal person who's a utilitarian and they say pain and pleasure, and, they're not a, debate me bro who uses descriptivism to mask the fact that they don't have any good arguments and instead tries to defend themselves with a descriptivist or morally subjectivist position so that they can basically use it as a get out of jail free card, then I think that it makes sense. Like you can say you can maximize pleasure and minimize pain, but then it becomes abstract and you don't actually know what your duty is. Like, what ought you do? What will bring around the greatest consequences? Why do you believe it will bring around the greatest consequences? And what are the greatest consequences? And why should I believe that these are the best outcomes, right? All of these problems like really start to occur. The next thing I would say with threshold deontology and the difference is that threshold deontology is coming from a deontological position. Now, how you interpret threshold deontology makes a hell of a difference. So I like to usually think of threshold deontology through prima facie duties that are given by W.D. Ross in The Right and the Good. Now, that's how I've always understood threshold deontology, but apparently some people understand threshold deontology in a way which just mashes up somehow consequentialism with deontology. Now, that seems to me that it just collapses, and this is a critique of threshold deontology, that would just collapse straight into consequentialism, because really all you ever caring about is the consequences. Well, you do your duty, but only because of the consequences. Because if the consequences were different, then you wouldn't do your duty. Now, you see, I think that makes no sense. And the only way this really can make sense, and I think for a threshold deontologist, and I think I said this to Avi, is deontology is about the reasons for action. You do your duty because the duty contains the reasons and the principles which are guiding your action, which are, which are right action. You are trying to do the right. You are trying to do the right thing, and these are the reasons why you're doing the right thing. So you do those you perform those reasons, right? You perform your duty. Now, that makes sense, okay? And then when you come into a conflict of duties, well, then we have an issue. W.D. Ross solves this with prima facie duties. Which duty is the higher order duty at face value? I can gain an understanding of a higher duty from simply seeing it. For example, my mother versus your mother in a burning building, I have a greater responsibility to my mother, I save my mother. He would say that's a prima facie duty, right? It's a self-evident duty. It arises in the situation in which there's a conflict of duties. And so the threshold is do your duty unless a higher order duty arises. So it's still deontological. Right? The threshold is of reasons and rationalities. Now, the same thing I think happens in Hegel. You do your duty until there's a conflict of duties, and then you resolve that conflict upon the side of what you believe to be the most rational. The issue is that tragedy is that you are both right and wrong at the same time. There is no standards from which to judge your action, and so the new standard has to be developed, understood, and then institutionalized, and so the threshold then moves up again. And this is just a way of essentially building a deontological system which covers more and more and more, right? So you don't. So eventually, the ideal goal is that you have a perfect normative system, and so when you do your duty, it actually works out it actually creates a rational, non-conflicting normative system. Okay, now that's how I would say it. And so the differences are quite clear. One is based purely on consequences, whilst one is a deontological system based on reasons. Now, some people just try to merge them and say, look, it's about reasons until X consequences. Now, the issue is that we understand those consequences in relation to the reasons of why it would be bad or good in the first place. We've already made, there are already guiding principles to our actions before we've even come to the conclusion of what consequences we actually ought to strive for, right? What is the good life? Why should I try and obtain it? All of these questions. So to then just go, well, we do what we do is, well, we do our duty, and then when it does consequences that we don't like, then we'll stop doing our duty. Well, it's like, look, if your duty would inform you of the consequences you're seeking. That's kind of the point. Which is why, Kant even talks about how the rational end of all is happiness. And it's not because he's necessarily like, all right, we're going to seek happiness. He's like, we are going to do our rational duty, and in the end, that will create the greatest overall consequences anyway. Although he doesn't really talk about consequences, Hegel kind of takes the loftiness from Kant and say, like, where he's like basically inconsiderate of consequences and context, and shows, well, actually the consequences and the context are what inform us of our duties. We have our reasons, which are abstract, and we know that we ought to do our duty, the formal. Then when we institutionalize them, we see that formal reason become tangible in relation to a human life. How do I respect someone else? What does it mean to respect someone else? What am I considering? In considering the other individual, I consider their experience. In considering their experience, I can see that something like starvation is bad, and so it may be my duty to feed them. So the context and the consequences inform our duties, but they don't supersede them. I think that understanding it as a supersession of a deontic responsibility just annihilates the entire normative theory. It just becomes consequentialism again. So I hope that answers your question there, mate. Funny, I was would that be transcendental idealism? I feel your position holds a lot of parallels with David Chalmers. It's funny you say that, because I wasn't far from where David Chalmers works recently. But I wouldn't say I'm far from transcendental idealism. I mean, like, I'm a Hegelian, so I'm built on a Kantian like framework, in the sense that Hegel built on, Kant, Fichte, Schelling, and so was inspired in the German idealistic tradition. But I would definitely make a transcendental argument for idealism. I'm not against questioning authority, but the idea of no authority or multiple private authorities is just silly. Yeah, I would probably agree. I mean, like, I think that there is, like, it should be democratic, if I'm honest. Am I a Platonist? Absolutely not. To be frank, I don't make ultimate claims, but I'm a skeptic for sure. I have no idea. Did I say something? What's my favorite thought experiment? Ooh, what is my favorite thought experiment? I'd probably say the state of nature. I really like the state of nature as just a way of thinking about humanity. Like, what are we in the state of nature? And I think that, like, when you read like Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and they're all saying different things, and it's just, I think it's really interesting. I didn't, Noob Slayer. How did it go? Do I make a distinction between consciousness and experience? No, not really. I've trained myself not to call them it anymore, since I think it undermines my vegan arguments. I would agree. I think it's just a slip of the tongue. I think that yeah, slip of the tongue, man. I understand there is epistemology, but assuming that we can know things about duty, what do people have to know things? It's immoral to make claims that require higher education to... Is it moral to make claims that require higher education to conceptualize, i.e. theory? I don't think it's immoral to theorize. I think that, look, education shouldn't be seen as like this, like, one, you can educate others, and education can be conceptual, and seeing education as, let's say, academic and formal, I think misses the point that education is actually just the conceptual framework of an individual being improved through rational argumentation and evidence, which is essentially being provided by a university for a fee, or a institution for a fee, usually. But education itself, you if you do a trade, you can learn more about your trade just doing the job, because you learn how to see what you work. Like, if you're a metal worker, you're going to get a greater understanding of the metal you're working with by just using the metal, right? By like hammering the metal and doing different things to the metal, you get a better understanding of how much stress it can take, what certain blows it can do, and what certain blows do to the metal, whether it'll tarnish or not, and what you can turn the metal into, in terms of, let's say, like if you're using snips on it, how much tolerance you should give yourself when you're performing certain cuts, things like that, right? You're gonna get that from on-the-job experience, and that's a conceptual build-up, right? Conceptual betterment. You have applied a concept to reality. It is then tested by reality, and then you've internalized the consequences and then reconceptualized what you're working with. So it's essentially a conceptual testing mechanism. And that's what I think we all are. So when you talk about, like, let's say, using higher arguments, like theoretical arguments, so long as you build people from the concepts that they have to a higher level of theorization, I don't see an issue. You take people from what they know to what is knowable. And I think that's for everyone. I think that's for everything. I'd say that it's essential, if anything. I don't know if you answered this already, but I asked before about your opinion on the topic of killing all carnivore animals. That was debated with VG and Foot Soldier. I still need to essentially, how do I feel about actually killing them? Like, what do I think? Right now, I think that, well, I think I wouldn't want to make claims about empirical stuff that I don't understand. That's the first thing. I don't know what the effect of killing carnivores would actually be, apart from their own deaths. So is it wrong? Like, let's just take in a vacuum. Is it wrong to kill a fox? I think that the main thing I would say is that all these individuals need to be treated as an end in themselves. Okay? Not a means to an end. As soon as they're treated as a means to an end, we've lost what we are actually trying to achieve. So everything must be done in order to prevent the, let's say, the harm done to other animals, and prevent the fox from, let's say, starving and like suffering and so on, right? So that might mean genetic engineering or something like that before considering, let's say, killing predatory animals. I think that we need to be very careful in how we interfere with nature. I don't think we know what the fuck we're doing. I think 2, I think that we need to stop killing animals before we start thinking about positive obligations and interfering in nature. You know, trying to modify nature to be a more ethical place. I think we really need to stop destroying it and take responsibility for our actions that are genuinely killing billions of animals a year before we think about what's going on in nature and whether we can do anything to resolve it. Essentially play God. And I think 3, if we are going to play God, which I don't have necessarily a problem against, we ought know what we're doing, and we ought respect everyone as an end in themselves. And so I don't see a way of doing that whilst slaughtering countless billions of animals for some proposed greater good. I think that screams to me that we of some sort of self-imposed some sort of self-righteousness. Moreover, because I think that it's not that we are necessarily wrong. It's that what is entailed here is incredibly complex. I mean, the annihilation of ants would be catastrophic to the ecosystem. So I don't even know what people even think we can do. Like, I just don't get it. Anyway. Oh yeah, Ben, don't worry about it, man. Like, honestly, I've seen that you've been there. You are also owed any conversations or anything. Don't worry about it. Since you've been a top tier patron for a while, and I haven't really been posting to Patreon that much, and I'm gonna start posting more, I'll just backdate any content that I post to you. I'll send it to you on Patreon so that you still get it, because you've been such a good patron. Thank you so much, Ben. I really do appreciate it. And don't worry, man. If you can't, like, never worry about it. And this was for everyone. If you can't, help support the channel, don't worry. Like, it's not your responsibility. If you can support the channel and you want to, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you can't afford it, don't stress yourself out, man. Don't do that to yourself. Hey PP, if I hypothetically stole some AirPods left lying around my university today, is that wrong? Finders keepers. Yeah, that's actually wrong. That's theft. Yeah, hand those in. Absolutely. What if someone stole your AirPods? What are your thoughts on the ethics of using animal models for medical research that can benefit animals and humans at large? What do you mean, like animal testing? I'm against animal testing. Have you heard of the new vegan fast food restaurant that's just came out in the UK called Ready Burger? No. Will Smith putting us on to Ready Burger. What's this, man? Ready Burger. Shit. Oh my god, I've just realized. No, Noah, you super chatted and I didn't see this. And oh right, I'm sorry, super chat people. I don't know why. One second, I'm gonna make sure my thing's coming up. Why is my alert box? Oh, I'm very sorry, Noah. I'm very sorry. So Noah said, and he super chatted $10, saying, free will. I'm an agnostic, but I lean. Our actions are determined by genetics and environment, but our will is thus determined. We are forced to choose. Tell me where the freedom is there. So the freedom actually, I would say, one, saying that your genetics and your environment are causally creating you, I think is one, unproven. We have no psychological evidence to show that you are actually the result of a biological process and all your actions are physically and causally determined. Two, I think that epistemologically, all of this is dependent upon human free will and action before we've even got to the point of establishing science. I have to accept that there is, let's say, a notion of truth from which I'm actively trying to find and participate and engage in, rather than, let's say, a biased psychological process from which I have no participation in, because truth would then be impossible and will fall into absurdity. So I would say that fundamentally, one, that we don't necessarily have to accept a physicalist account for humanity and or consciousness as a whole. I think that to accept a physicalist account is to be at this point I would say philosophically naive. I would say naive. I think that after how many arguments have been presented which have, I think, destroyed physicalism, I don't know why I would ever believe that. So explain, like, I don't know where you and it's well, whether it even explains your behavior. Like, you can explain, let's say, the formation of your brain. You could explain the formation of your physical body and the limitations that imposes upon you and how you act in the world, your appendages and shit. But it doesn't necessarily explain whether you are free to choose one action or another. So yeah, it's not like the physical world is incompatible with free will, which I think a lot of people interpret it as if free will and the physical realm cannot coexist, which is just nonsense. Our will is thus determined. We are forced to choose. Tell me where the freedom is there. So yeah, like, I hope that answers your question. So I'm not going to argue for, let's say, like a compatibilist notion of free will. I genuinely think that this question about free will is totally misguided when you're trying to explain human freedom in a physically causal modus. I think that we're missing the point that our understanding of physical causation is built upon psychological recognition and mutual agreement and engagement around a common goal, which is truth. So yeah, I hope that answers the question, Noah. But if you want to see more about that, check out my determinism debunked video. Head Games super chat at $5 says, thoughts on pleasure. I hold a Nietzschean position where pleasure and pain are epiphenomena for overcoming resistance towards your goals. Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, like, pleasure and pain, I would just say, like, there is the frustration of the will and the satisfaction of the will. In that kind of Nietzschean sense, I'd probably agree. And I would just put it down, and I think even Socrates, like, not Socrates, Plato even talked about this, like, mental, what's going on? This cable will help. What is going on? Okay, I just knocked something over there, but whatever. No, there's no way to justify slavery. What's going on here? Am I coming through okay, guys? because I have no idea. I think the monarchy really reduces the likelihood of an individual being an actual subject and able to express their own subjectivity. They become a vacuous hand of the people, like an empty subject who represents the will of the people, or they become like tyrannical, and their actions in the world represent let's say, themselves. I think that, don't get me wrong, actually, I will say that if they were a monarch in the sense that they were a representative leader and in their spare time could do whatever they want, but in this role they represent just the will of the people, then they would be included in that. But it's the fact that the monarch is given sovereignty. There is no higher power. They are the power. But I think that fundamentally that the recognition and the proposed right from the body of the public is the establishment of justification, and that is where power lies, and that's where power ought lie. So that's probably why I would say I would be against monarchy. Revolutionary reform. You don't necessarily have to be like either or. I would take non-violent revolutionary reform. I think that we need massive changes to our institutions, but in a way that doesn't destroy the institutions, but rather betters them. So reform it mostly, I would say. Who has better politics, Vosh or Destiny? Oh man, why are you doing this to us? Okay, right. So I like Vosh's conclusions about market socialism, right? But all of his arguments for it, for everything, are really bad. Like, so it's like one of those things where you're asking us, like, thank you very much, Noah, for the donation. Thought experiment here. If all physical variables are accounted for, then would the actions of the individual be predictable? If not, why not? Okay, one second. I'll answer that in a second. So quickly to say that I think Vosh has better conclusions. Destiny's better at arguing, but is wrong. I think Destiny understands philosophy more than Vosh. I think Destiny's actually just smarter than Vosh, to be entirely honest with you. But Vosh is a politician. Vosh is capable of using, I mean, actually, I don't even know how Vosh is even doing so well. Actually, I'm not even going to pretend to know. But whatever. I probably agree with Vosh's conclusions more, but think Destiny has better working out. Like the new haircut. Thanks, man. Thought experiment here. If all physical variables are accounted for, then will all actions of the individual be predictable? If not, why not? They wouldn't, because the cause of action is not physical. Does that help, Noah? That the fundamental explanation of reality, the metaphysical explanation of the individual, cannot be reduced to physical causes. So an individual is more than their brain. I mean, to be entirely honest with you, I don't think anything can be reduced to purely physical, a physical explanation at all. I'm an absolute idealist, so trying to point towards physicalism is a mistake. I'm just going to say that it's not physical. But I will go this far. I will say that, like, I think that theoretical physics is going the right way. I was watching PBS Science the other day on quantum tunneling, and some of the stuff that's talked about in theoretical physics aligns so much better with philosophy. It's great. I'm definitely going to do some stuff on theoretical physics at some point, like the philosophy of theoretical physics. Thank you for the donation, Isaiah. Have there been any texts that improve or reform Hegel's science of logic? And what is the utility of reading the science of logic? What's its relation to what's your relation to this text? Okay, so look, I can't really think of any like great. I'm trying to think of there's a good, like, not reformation. I've seen some decent, like, maybe like readers' guides and stuff, but nothing that's like reformed the science of logic, like kind of refined it or anything, Not in my experience, but that's just might be my lack of reading. What would I say? It was the utility of reading the science of logic. The science of logic outlines what philosophy is about. It's the like so. Look at it like this. The reason that Hegel puts the science of logic, so he starts with the science of logic, the philosophy of nature, and then the philosophy of mind, because that's kind of the order that he sees this whole endeavor going down. We have the formal, we have the formal logical explanation of reality, which needs to be given context within nature, which then ultimately, what's the word I'm looking for? Which is made whole in the philosophy of mind. Like the science of logic is the development of thought itself. It's how we are thinking. It's how thinking can develop. It's how it will develop. And logic is the underlying structure which is guiding the philosophical mind through generation after generation, historically building upon itself. The philosophy of nature is an explanation of how identity works within the identity works within the physical world, and how that is conforming to logical basis, which is then producing a mind which is able to grasp the concept which exists in the philosophy of reality, like the fundamental metaphysical concept of reality is embodied in the consciousness. Is first aware of itself in a conscious subject. As that becomes better and more complex, then we have a movement towards absolute spirit, which is a movement towards absolute knowing, which is the concept which knows itself, the self understanding the self. So the science of logic is setting up the formal foundations for everything else to come. I hope that explains the question. And what's my relation to it, actually? Well, I mean, I don't think you can understand Hegel really without understanding some of the science of logic, at least. I think that understanding how it, to be entirely honest, I think that it's a brilliant text. I think understanding how thought develops through time, his arguments in relation to the development of logic itself, I think are really amazing. I think it's really great. Ready Burger 100. Sorry, I'm just quickly checking Ready Burger out, guys. So I'm just gonna. No, is this 100% plant-based? World's first 1.99 plant burger. I will say this, right? Look, in York, you can go. They've got Byron now have vegan burgers, and the vegan burger at Byron is incredible. By the way, it's called the Truffler. It's just amazing. And then there's a place here called Visa Guys who has a really amazing vegan burger. There was loads of oh my god, it's just there's loads of great stuff now. What does Christianity get right and what does it get wrong? Okay. I mean, it depends, man, because Christianity's broad. I think that it gets a lot of stuff right in the sense that the relationship with the divine and the notion of infinity and perfection or absolute, I think is really interesting. But it depends on what kind of Christianity you're talking about. There's do you mean Catholics? I mean, I think that they get a lot right about how community necessarily forms our relationship with the divine and our understanding of the relationship with the divine. I think that Christian ethics, I think Christian ethics are pretty great. I don't see any real problems except for the dogmatism. When people get fundamentalists or dogmatic about what the Bible actually says rather than the spirit of what the Bible's trying to convey about human life. The authority of the church over the individual, I think has made an ethical agent which is underdeveloped and prevented them actually flourishing. And that's why the rejection of the church at this point is an essential step, so that even if the church does survive, that the individual agent becomes a fundamental pillar of the institution, rather than seeing the, let's say, and understanding themselves as, let's say, the rocks and the foundations of the church being the flock, the people in the institution, rather than, let's say, the spiritual leaders, as they're proposed to be. I would say that's probably the main thing that gets wrong, is that, let's say, the unjustified hierarchy towards understanding divinity. Don't get me wrong, I think that there is some things to be said. I think that the knowledge that priests often have, let's say, Catholic priests, I was talking to a Catholic priest, would have been about a year ago nearly, actually, but he was a Wittgensteinian. Sorry, he wrote his he wrote his degree, his dissertation on Wittgenstein at Durham University. So I was just like, wow, that's actually that's actually really well educated. Thank you for the donation, man. I'm Draco from the Vegan Hegel Convo. I will DM you on Discord and with links that connect SOL to theoretical physics, modal type, and so on. You may enjoy. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really do. I don't know where I was. I totally don't know where I went. All right. Oh yeah. So like, there is like an argument to be made about justified hierarchy towards their education, like, the techne, which I completely understand. But then it seems to me that the Catholic Church, in the production of Catholic doctrine, are very authoritarian. It's all about what even the normal clergy aren't considered, right? It's this like very small group of individual actors who believe they know best because they've managed to work their way up a hierarchical institution. And I don't mean to say anything bad, because, right, all right, the Pope, that's great. But the Pope, I think, really, like, I'm probably, I don't know whether, is it wrong? Can you call yourself a Catholic and say that it should become a democratic institution? Because I think it should. I think it 100% should. At least the priests should be voting on who's the next pope. Oh, is the internet not working for you, man? Like, I'm really sorry. I don't know why. Like, it should let you downgrade it. The alternative of physicalism is accepting that immaterial things exist, which is absurd to me and reminds me of religion. Well, no, it just means that they're like, so for one, I would say that immaterial things exist. I mean, like, shit, you're going to say that dreams don't exist. And you're going to say that, like, thoughts don't exist, even as objects of the mind. I think that's ridiculous. I think that assuming that everything is material is the ridiculous thing to stand by. And I think philosophically, it's even been shown that we have no way of doubting thought itself, but we can doubt matter. And I think Bernard Kastrup even makes that argument about how we have more reason to believe in, let's say, like the Cartesian like thinking thing than we do the physical world. But even if you were to accept a physical explanation of reality, then it can only be made sense of through sense organs which detach you from reality, so you experience sensation and not physical reality anyway, so your connection to physical objects is non-existent. So you believe in physical objects from which you never actually experience. So your belief in an external world is built entirely on faith. That is what happens when you take a physicalist position. And I think Berkeley showed that. So I'm not going to lie. I think that, no, the physicalism is the bad position. I'm sorry. Lower resolutions are back. All right, that's great. Destiny is very intelligent. I'd say Destiny's kind of smart. Like, I'll give him he's a smart guy. I don't even think Vosh is stupid. I just think he's a dick. What happened to me Twitter account in a sentence or two? I just got bogged down with work, so I deactivated it for a bit because I think social media is a bit of a distraction and it's just too much to kind of deal with. I just had too much going on. Opinion on psychoanalytics. I love psychoanalytics. I've actually been reading more on the structures of the psyche in Lacan. I think psychoanalytics is brilliant. I think that needs a lot of work done. There's a lot of work that needs done in it. And I think like I could see myself doing, after I've finished even my PhD, I wouldn't mind going and getting a master's degree in psychoanalytics or even just, training and become like a psychoanalyst. I mean, I could do it anyway. I could just research it and stuff myself and do the philosophy of psychoanalytics, which I might just do. But I think it'd be kind of cool to understand like a patient-centered perspective. Matt Dillahunty's saying veganism is an irrational position. Does he really? Does he really? I'd absolutely tell him to debate us. 100%. I'd say that is perhaps the worst claim I think I've ever heard, that veganism is the irrational position. I would retort saying that that meat eating or non-veganism, carnism, in contemporary society is the irrational position. What are my views on Hegel's philosophy of right and its implications? Is that with reference to a symmetry between abstract right and / morality and the ability to engage in civil society and discourse? So abstract right morality really is basically kind of like the Kantian empty formulation. It's the subject thinking about right and wrong independent of the institutions which would guide them in their actions. This leads to what Hegel considers to call the irony of the subjective, where we actually think we're doing the right thing, but often doing the wrong thing. It's not necessarily, I don't think he would consider that evil, and his understanding of evil would be the deliberate rejection of the system of right based on one's own reasoning. The establishment of trying to establish, a rule-based system external to external to ethics. He would see as evil. From what I understand of evil in his position, but then the individual and their concrete judgments are always made subjectively. So it's like if you think totally non-institutionally and you don't engage with others with your in terms of ethical discourse, and you try to establish some sort of abstract notion of good and bad or right and wrong, you are going to essentially come to either poor arguments, and if you don't, then you're going to be accidentally coming to the correct argument, and it's essentially all built on a house of cards. There's nothing objective about it, and it's not grounded in in what he would consider the concept, like in reality. It's not grounded in the objective exploration of the self, which cannot be done by a single individual, and it has to be done universally. So what we need is what we are trying to find is the universal right and wrong, rather than, let's say, a particular judgment of right and wrong. And this is where ethics comes from. This allows us to understand what is actually justifiable and unjustifiable rationally, because reason is now grounded within institutions. It's given concrete reality. It's like we can I think that Hegel would accept that we can independently, that Kant was right but only formally. Okay, so that like the independent subject would, when they actually come to conclusions of right and wrong, are actually right if they did if they purely philosophically came to the same conclusions as someone like Immanuel Kant. They're kind of right. He's not going to deny that this tautology is untrue. He's going to, yes, the tautology is true. It just tells me nothing about my life. It tells me nothing of how I ought to act, and it doesn't even tell me what I'm necessarily talking about. Which is why if we take that sort of empty rationalization and we try to apply it to our lives, we'll often end up in misery. What we need is concrete reasoning which is the application to the lives of all individuals, reasoned out philosophically, and then codified in law, like into duty, and that would be ethics. I hope that explains your question, Avi. The only thing I could add is that the codification process into law itself is, in terms of civil society, is about what it takes into consideration is the fact that we are all actually engaged within institutions which we are mutually recognizing each other and trying to succeed to create certain goals in our lives. And so our main point of contact in a broader overall society is actually between mutual institutions performing certain tasks so that we can live a good life which has, certain amenities and certain ways of being, which allows for the greater expression of subjectivity. I.e., I engage in the family, the workplace. You've got your hospitals, you've got your political centers, you've got your religious organizations, and all of these organizations together institutionally form the basis of a society from which an individual can live, let's say, like a wholesome life, a life which allows for the greatest expression of their subjectivity. But within those institutions, we come into conflicts of duties and responsibilities based on the reasons for actually trying to achieve the actions. And so the institutions are in a constant state of revolution, a constant state of reformation. And that is why society keeps getting better and better. But they're also in conflict with each other, and civil society as a whole is in a state of reform and revolution. And that's around, and it should be for Hegel, the same as Aristotle, around what is in the good life of the individual. But the good life of the individual for Hegel is the self. It is the good life for the self. So when we are acting at all engaged in society, we should be trying to consider the good life for everyone, simpliciter. So yeah. I don't see how dualism is any less naive than physicalism. I'm not a dualist. Noah, I don't think it's naive in the sense that I don't think that people are dumb for being physicalists. Like, Christ, I mean, like, to the point in which, I mean, like, what, like 90% of the population aren't going to understand what physicalism means. So to say that someone was stupid for being a physicalist, I think is ridiculous. I think that I would say the physicalism is wrong. I don't think that it's naive. I think that it seems intuitive. I can understand why people would argue for it. I think dualism, I don't like the arguments for that. I think that the arguments are often a little bit like unjustified. I don't think that we need to appeal to a dual world to explain certain aspects of a reality. Do I think that they're naive? Often not. There's some really quite capable Platonic philosophers. And even like Kantians. So I don't know what you mean necessarily, Noah. I will say that I think they're both wrong. But I'm not neither a dualist or a physicalist. This Hegel guy sounds like he was pretty smart. Yeah, he was quite a smart guy. Hi there, Persp. We'll try to start streaming random stuff for friends, and would you be cool with listening to your stuff while doing so? They'd also hear it. Thought it's best to ask. Yeah, man. Like, if your friends want to see my stream, you can show them my stream. I don't know why they would want to see my stream. Terrible. What's your philosophy on suicide, and should one... Oh my God, that escalated quick. What's your philosophy on suicide, and should one have the right to take their life? I think that it's contextual. I think that if an individual is horribly depressed and they want to take their life, that's not really a good justification. If someone is suffering intensely in hospital and has been told they will die in 5 days, or even in 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, right? Trapped in syndrome. 3 doctors agree that it's incurable, nothing will change, or very unlikely to change. The individual is suffering an intense amount of pain, philosophers have even joined in the conversation and argued, the individual is rational. Like, psychologists and psychoanalysts and philosophers, everyone's involved. Like, yes, this is a rational conclusion. Yes, this person is like making is sane and actually coming from a place in which it would be within their best interests. The individual consents, and the medical information supports the claim. I don't see an issue with an individual taking their own life in that scenario. I think that asking them to live, especially if it's on, if you're asking someone to live on life support, but they don't want to continue living, and they're given the option to reject life support, but not given the option to choose a painless death, I think is inhumane. I think that asking someone to painfully take their life through the inaction of accepting certain treatment versus painlessly taking their life by accepting a certain, like drug or something, I think that they are almost identical in terms of reasoning, except one is creating an overall negative experience, or negative narrative. Antinatalism seems correct. Your thoughts? There is no justification for antinatalism as a universal principle. Contextually, I think that we shouldn't have, that we should consider whether we should or shouldn't have children. I think that there is often, most people have children without considering whether it's right or wrong. I think that's selfish and immature. I think that having children is a great responsibility. And if you can't provide, if you aren't treating that individual as an end in themselves, and you aren't being rational about whether it is a good thing for you to have a child, whether you could be a good parent, and considering the overall contexts, then you are being rash. I don't think there is anything necessarily wrong with having children, but I think that it is a moral dilemma, and you should consider whether it is right or wrong to have children in the situation you're in, wherever it is all over the world. So yeah. I would definitely debate Delahunty, yeah, 100%. Yeah, we consider like I don't even disagree, Noah, that there is a connection between the mind, like the mind and the brain. Like I would not even, of course not. I just don't think that we can explain, like that doesn't necessarily mean that the brain has absolute causal authority over the decision-making process. Like an individual, like just because we don't reduce things to the physical form doesn't mean that there is no physical component within what we are. We could be hylomorphic, which means that we can be multifaceted in terms of what we are fundamentally constituted from. So understanding our physical, like even in terms of explanatory power, understanding our physical, let's say our physical characteristics won't offer an explanation to our experiences in the world. I don't, through understanding, let's say my eyes, I don't understand, and my eyes and my brain and my central nervous system, I don't get an experience of beauty. And I think that this is something that I think's been neglected since even Aristotle. We are looking towards the sciences, as if they can offer greater explanatory power over every facet of our lives, without considering that there are certain aspects of our lives which science is not suitable, or rather, not the most appropriate field to explain that area of our lives. It doesn't offer greater explanatory power. And I think that we just look towards science as a way to replace religion. We're like, oh, well, how do we find meaning in our lives? How do we understand the fundamental experiences that we're in? How do we remove our responsibilities for ourselves and put it instead upon a higher or previous cause from which I have no control over? Science. And I think Nietzsche was right about that. I think that it's just the scientific aesthetic, unfortunately, attracts so many individuals who really are struggling with the fact that there is no guiding force to their life. And they want to feel, and a lot of the time they just want to feel rational. They want to feel like they're guided. They want to feel like everything is, structured and makes sense. And so science, it's just religion in a different way. Aesthetic idealism, isn't it? In Nietzschean terms. Assuming that thoughts are immaterial is no smaller of a leap than assuming that they're immaterial than if they were material. Why is it that the only rational position is agnosticism? The only way to determine is through empirical data. Well, no, one, I'm not an empiricist. I think empiricism is fundamentally flawed. That would be my real, like, I think that's just the, like, you know, absolutely been destroyed now, actually, empiricism. In my opinion, I think that Sellars' argument against empiricism alone is enough to destroy empiricism. I don't know why anyone relies upon empiricism anymore. Like empirical data, like measurements and stuff are useful, but empiricism is wrong. Right? Like it's wrong. like okay. It comes down to how you understand what sense experience is, and whether you're seeing a particular or a universal, and whether there is such a thing as substance, or an underlying logos or concept to reality. I think this idea of presuppositionalist science became popular probably around the time of Francis Bacon, and I think that the move towards empiricism is built off, you know, the Reformation, and the rejection of the Christian Aristotelianism for a what really came to be, you know, right reason and scripture. And so our understanding of the world was thought of in either nominalist terms or in conceptualist terms. And I talk more about this in my course, but suffice it to say, I think that the empiricist account is fundamentally flawed. I think I've already said that numerous times in this debate, and why in this conversation. Jesus, already ready to get into the debate. In this conversation, I think that I've already explained why empiricism is wrong, and where to find out why it's wrong. I think the explanation of consciousness as physical is, or the world or the universe in physical terms, is usually the question which has the burden of proof. I think that we can understand things in terms of the self-evidence of thought fundamentally, and there's no reason necessarily to believe that thought is physically orientated, or physically produced, that I'm experiencing a physical reality when I think, or that thinking is only and can only be understood in physical terms. And I think that is it's not to say that it could not be, but that it can only be, would be the what I would say would be the rejection of physicalism. So that's the real difference. It like, look, an absolutist idealist doesn't deny the existence of matter. Almost any idealist, I don't know any idealist who doesn't accept the existence of some sort of material world, right? It's just what the material world or reality is constituted of is not simply material, okay? And we have no reason to believe it is. And that's the difference. Do I believe that everything is only experience and that everything is a hallucination? Well, look, I think that actually raises a really good point, Noops, there. It's not only one experience. Well, kind of and kind of not. I think, yes, I think that there is. I think the universality of experience is the fundamental constitutive reality that exists. What exists is experienced reality. That's all. That is what is, I would argue. And then pointing towards a hallucination, I think that is exactly why we need to move towards psychoanalytics and show what a hallucination actually is and why that is separate from our experiences in a day-to-day reality. Hallucinations are symptoms in relation to how we engage with truth and how we engage with our lives and our desires. They are figments of our imagination which are being mistaken or somehow becoming perceived as reality. And that has a structural cause. You know, why are we seeing these images or hearing these sounds? How is this resulting from my engagement with reality? And I think that's what psychoanalytics seeks to understand. I think that or at least, like, even if you were to say, like, well, what happens if you take a drug? What happens if you take a substance which makes you hallucinate, right? The forms in which they take have a basis in the psyche. Even if the cause was related to the physical, you know, taking the drug and altering a brain state. The altered brain state then, you know, has its expression as a certain, you know, form or a certain image, right? So what really gives an explanation to hallucinations is this engagement between multiple parties, as in, if I see something that you don't, and we all don't see it, except for, let's say everyone doesn't see it but me, then there is a good reason to believe, probabilistically, that it's actually not there. If it's logically incoherent, there is something going wrong. If there's something absurd about it, there is reason to believe it's not actually there. But that can only be known if I'm capable of right reason, which I might not be. So I need multiple individuals to even check my reason. And then in a common domain, if you aren't experiencing it with me, and I'm experiencing it alone, but I'm experiencing it as if it were common, then I can know that it is not common from your engagement. Right? No, but like, let's say I was hallucinating the voice of God, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm, one, not hearing the voice of God. It's certainly possible. But it does mean that it's not common. The next thing I need to understand is whether the voice that I'm hearing actually is the voice of God, and whether I should listen to it or not. Right? So am I rational for believing God is talking to me? Is God telling me to do something which is irrational? Would God command such a thing? These are the kind of questions that are then raised. So I think that the separation between a hallucination and an objective idealist position is the lack of objectivity. It's the subjectivity. So that's really what I would argue. Do ethics exist in dreams? Would it be wrong for someone to lucid dream and willingly manifest a child to torture in the dream? Well, I mean, look, there is, like, let's say you could lucid dream and torture someone in the dream, which is, I'm not gonna lie, a bit weird. I would say that my main concern would be the propagation of desire in the agent, which would then go on to want to torture. I think that's unhealthy towards the self. It would be like watching, like, weird hentai or something, right? That, like, promotes some sort of sexual exploitation. I don't think it's good for you. I think that, to be entirely, it promotes negative behaviors and negative ways of thought, if I'm honest. Do you agree with McIntyre's thesis in After Virtue? If so, would a virtue ethicist practice the virtues in a society that doesn't value them or has a warped view of them? Do you agree with McIntyre's thesis in After Virtue? If so, how would a virtue ethicist practice the virtues in a society that doesn't value them or has a warped view of them? I mean, I do agree with Alistair McIntyre on a lot of things, but it depends on what you mean by his thesis in After Virtue, because it's quite, I mean, that's a very big book to say, do I agree with his thesis? I'm trying to remember the, like, specifics. If so, would a virtue, I mean, I know his position on virtue and the virtues that he promotes in our society. But I think he even says that the society themselves and their understanding of what is virtuous develops over time. So practice the virtues in a society that doesn't value them or has a warped view of them. Well, I think that there is a separation between, let's say, rational. So, like, it depends if he's involved with. I would say it requires a rational, ethical community, which requires participation by multiple agents. But upon that, then yes, they can. But it has to. I would say that they would have to exist in the society to then be talked about and understood, rather than being conceptually non-present. So, and I think McIntyre would make the same point. To be entirely honest with you. What is? Oh, thank you for the donation. Could the people we manifest in our dreams be conscious from an information processing standpoint? I think we could say so. Do you agree? I mean, it would only ever be you, right? Like that would. But I mean, I guess that's kind of the Hegelian point in general, where like like it's only ever you, right? Like all you ever like. But like there we are, universal. It's the same substance, I suppose. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I have no idea where consciousness comes from. I don't think any of us do. And whether you could say that you could manifest consciousness in a dream, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know if that's... I've heard... I mean, theoretically, maybe. I don't know. I think you'd only be able to create it from yourself. So it would actually be an aspect of your own consciousness from which you were unaware, which then calls into question notions of personal identity. And I know Locke would probably be going crazy, because he was like, well, it's not the same person because they have different memories, but then it's whether they share the same substance, and what is the substance of the personal identity. So I mean, I would probably fall on the side that I think you'd end up producing an aspect of yourself, and that I would be surprised if you could be entirely psychologically cut off, not just disassociated, but entirely separate. And then you could probably have an aspect of yourself that you're torturing, which you're disassociated from. Maybe. That's probably where I would fall into. But I mean, that's just on the spot. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not entirely sure. I think there would probably be a disassociated self from which you maybe were, if there was a consciousness there, were experiencing but weren't associating with, maybe an entirely different consciousness manifest from you. I'm not sure. And I think that if you did have like the only way you could ever, if you had reason to believe that, if you looked into their eyes and you're like, this is a conscious agent, or I have reason to believe this could be a conscious agent. Or even just knowing that this is possible and you are manifesting a consciousness to torture, then yes, you're acting unethically. What would make Doomslayer's scenario... Noobslayer's scenario immoral? What do you mean apart from the torturing of the potential conscious being? Or do you mean like if it was just him? If it was just him, I would say that it would manifest unhealthy desires, which could then ultimately cause forms of frustration within him when he can't actually then go and engage with them, or perpetuate those behaviors and actually engage with them even worse. From almost a virtue ethical point of view, I don't think. I think that it's. Yeah, I think it could just necessarily... I think engaging in sadism is usually a bad thing for the individual. I would say, like, for themselves. I think it causes distance from other individuals. I mean, like, I'm kind of torn. Like, sadism... Like, sadomasochism in, like, let's say the bedroom, right? How far can it go? What are the limits of consent? I think are the foundations of where we should take this. I think that if you're breaching consent in a way that's not just play, like it's like genuinely breaching consent, like rape, right? If that's what you're do, like, not doing because it's a dream, if that's what you are essentially manifesting in a way to enjoy in this sort of hypothetical environment, I think that is, even though that there is no one in reality being harmed, the overall propagation of that desire is unhealthy. Your relationship with the other is being damaged. and so it damages the self. I hope that answers the question. I agree with you on science not likely not being the best tool to explain everything. I'm just skeptical on very strong claims about reality. Fair enough. What is the final goal of humanity? I'd say that the final goal of all sentient beings is the expression of expression of subjectivity. Homeless engineer. I hope you're not actually homeless. I think it's fairly uncontroversial that you need both sense experience and reason to navigate reality. Yeah, pretty much. How do I turn off my philosophical tick? I just want to hang out with my friends and I'll think about the morality of killing an AI sometimes. Do you know what I mean? No, I have no idea how to turn it off. If I'm honest, Head Games. If I knew how to turn this off, I would have by now. Like I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like I can kind of, just talk about other stuff, but something will be, kind of come up, and then I'll be like, I've got to say something here. I cannot not say something here. Like my friends will be like, oh yeah, like animals, death, destruction, disease. Oh yeah. Not that bad though, right? And I'll be like, what the fuck? No, no, but let's say like they make a point about like me being vegan, or let's say someone brings up, I don't know, someone's died and I don't know, life after death or something. People bring up like philosophy all the time. They just don't realize they're bringing up philosophy. Rationalism is just as bad, blah, 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 blah. You need empirical data. Yeah, but that's not like, but look, like rationalism doesn't prevent so you could have something that's synthetic a priori, right? And I would argue for that, right? So something which is logically true and that there is a connection between the concept and the object, right? Or the idea. Right, the idea and the object, if that helps. It depends on how you answer Hume's fork here, Stanek. Is it Stanek? Yeah, Stanek. So if you answer Hume's fork and you agree with Hume, you are an empiricist. If you answer Hume's fork and you agree with someone like Kant, you are not an empiricist. It doesn't mean that you deny empirical data. It just means you are not an empiricist. Could we have a discussion on my main channel? Absolutely, Head Games. I have no idea what your main channel is, but absolutely. Ella, you guys have very advanced brains. Thanks, Ella. I don't think we'd be able to assume causation without physical things first. We saw things repeating occurrences and then assumed causation through our empiricism. Actually, quite the opposite. If you look at, empiricists like David Hume, that's the issue. He says, I see one ball hit another, but I do not, I see one, he's talking about billiard balls, isn't he? So it's like, I see one ball strike another, but I see no third cause betwixt them. So he sees the object A strike object B, but he does not see the cause which would be in between the two objects. Causation is not an empirically observable feature of reality. What we see is event A and event B, and then induce a causal explanation. Whilst that can be overcome with something like transcendental idealism, in which you understand that actually the application of cause of certain concepts like causation, inner sense, outer sense, space and time. Well, inner sense and outer sense, space and time. So cause, space and time make reality intelligible. And until that application from the mind to reality, there would be no explanatory power. There would be no way of explaining reality as it is. And I think Hume Kant really took Hume apart on that. Quite the opposite. I think that viewing empirical reality and seeing causation and going, oh yes, causation, is only ramifying the Kantian position. because you don't see causation. You see two events and assume causation. Causation only makes sense because you've already applied the concept to reality and to motions that bodies interact and are genuinely moving and explaining each and engaging with each other. So empiricism doesn't actually allow for causation to be explained. That's one of the main issues there. So yeah. Do you ever think much about Debord's ideas on the spectacle? Yeah, I like, the inverted reality that we live in. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's really interesting. Am I ever going to do psychedelics? I have thought about it before, but I don't think I will. I don't know if it's worth the risk. I mean, like, I thought about mushrooms after watching like the Mike the Vegan video on mushrooms and seeing that they're not actually that dangerous. But I would rather understand them a lot better before I took the plunge. I didn't mean that in an offensive way, but I just realized simple can be an offensive term. I have no idea what you're talking about, Ella, so you couldn't have offended us. Why did your parents divorce? Because of you, Caviar Brave. You caused your parents to divorce. And it's a hard reality to live with, but perhaps if you hadn't been born and put them under so much stress, your parents would have lived happy lives together. I'm sorry. No, okay, your parents divorced because, well, actually, I mean, there's a lot of things that could have, caused a divorce. But it's ultimately, it could be a good or a bad thing. It's just part of life, right? Believe me, divorce isn't that, of all the things that go wrong in life, divorce is probably not the worst. Do I think Christianity is rational? I think it can be. Reason is built on patterns of sense experience. No. I think that you would need reason to see the patterns within sense experience. Homeless engineer, so that can't make sense. I think that connected, that seeing patterns is like understanding certain patterns within sense experience allows you to develop and reflect, which allows for greater rational capabilities. And so logic, so like the content, this is why the science of logic is so really so useful, because the logical, the formal logical content, the formal logic is one and the same as the content of the thinking. So as thinking develops and becomes more complex, so does the logic behind it. And so as we are developing in complexity, so is our logic and our rationality. I would 100% say that thoughts seem intertwined with matter, and our brains. Yeah. The phenomena of thought isn't simply matter, it's very tightly linked to a specific biological matter, in my honest opinion. I'm not sure what you mean there either. Imagine calling space-time material. You're completely propagandized. I don't know who's called space-time material. What metric do you determine to use the realness of something? Is it continuity? Is it vividness? I think reality is actually... I think that the only way that we can genuinely understand reality is not through individuated experience and how we feel about something, but rather about the presence of the other and a common domain. I think that, like, as long as there's a common domain and another individual, you're in reality. Like, I was saying this to my girlfriend the other day. I'm sure she was listening. I was saying that I would consider, like, if you were in a dream, but someone was to then enter the dream, you are now in reality, even though you're in a dream. Because there is something external from you within the dream. So even if the physical parameters of the common domain are dependent upon you, if their conscious experience enters the frame, then you are in reality because there is something mind independent from which you are engaging with. Do you believe in soulmates? And on the opposite side of the spectrum, it depends on what you mean by soulmates. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, what do you think that anyone can learn to be happily married to anyone? I don't think that anyone can be happily married to anyone. I think it's about purpose. I think Aristotle got it right when he talked about soulmates being about the final cause, you know, the end goals in which we share. If your end goal becomes merged into a single entity, then I would say then you have this, you share the same spirit. You are now a family. You share the same identity in that respect. And that's what I would say it would genuinely be. You are still the one processing the information. It's like saying an imaginary friend is conscious. What the hell's going on? Is this to me? Like, you can't dream about a face that you've never actually seen, apparently. I don't know if I believe that. I think I've dreamed about faces that I've never seen. I like, at least, like, I think I've amalgamated multiple faces together, at least. Soulmates and lucid dreaming. Is it woo-woo time? Apparently. Yeah, it would be indulging a sadistic fetish. I would agree, Mr. Laugh. And I think that's probably the bad thing about it. 420 Blazer. When you talk, what is it? When you talk about terms in Hegel's dialectic with infrared, what are you referring to? I.e., what does it mean to be the first, second, and third term? I can't remember what part of the conversation you're referring to. I'm sorry. Do you have like a timestamp that you want us to explain? That would probably help. Your chronic pain is just a meme. Thanks, man. I'm feeling much better now. I hope I didn't do this. Oh, no. All right. Okay. You're not the person that I was joking with. Okay. You know what? Church of Messianic Genitals. I don't think I am going to Google anything that you send. To be entirely honest with you, I think that would make me a goddamn idiot. And I recommend nobody else Google anything he said either. I'll probably just determine someone to Google it now. So if after we die, oh no, I just missed it. Sorry. Happy Halloween. You know what? Fuck it. Happy Halloween. You know what? Halloween forever. That's cool. Crow. I'll check it out. I definitely want to talk to KMB again in the future. How can you be an idealist without becoming a solipsist? If you're an argument against solipsism, can't you hold that to argue for physicalism? No, because solipsism is the rejection of others and other minds. Like, other minds don't necessarily have to have a physical basis. Like, why would you have to become... Like, I think if you're taking it from, like, a... let's say, like, if you're taking it from, like, a position in which, you know, let's say at the end of Cartesian reasoning, or out Cartesian doubt, or maybe some sort of existentialist position, and you're trying to work out why you should believe in the existence of other minds, I would say because it is the most likely occurrence. It's the most rational position to have. I would even say that you, as an individual, don't even make sense unless other minds exist. You cannot deny the existence of other minds for reason to hold, for you to exist, and for any possible self-recognition. It's an undeniable aspect of our epistemological fields, right? But material and matter is deniable. Well, it is, but let's say the only causal, the only cause of reality being physical, being true, is a much bigger claim than whether other people exist or not. Like, we could all exist in a simulation. It's a lot easier to imagine being in a simulation, and then than it is to with other people than it is to let's say deny or accept the existence of I think of an entirely physical reality, especially after how badly physicalism is done in terms of being philosophically justified. Morality must be objective by a timeless, unchanging intellect, or we must admit that deep down we all have the desire to kill, murder, steal, etc. So we created law based on the simple ceasefire. Like no, man. Like, look, you can look morality. Look, you don't necessarily need a timeless, unchanging intellect. You need the possibility of a timeless, unchanging intellect, or rather, if there were a timeless, unchanging intellect, they would see that the right thing to do is X. We don't have to be timeless, unchanging, and perfect. We just have to be better than we are and understand that we are moving towards the goal of that timeless, perfect reasoning, which is absolute spirit. Whether we actually obtain absolute spirit or the end of absolute spirit as absolute knowing is separate from whether we are engaged in ethics that is objective. And then, we are all capable of sadism, masochism, and loads of other weird shit. And the law does purify our desires. But that doesn't mean, like, ethics isn't objective. So, yeah. Salvia. What's salvia, man? I don't even know if sage. Am I looking at the right thing? Sage, as in sage and onion, because that's what's coming up for me, man. Oh no. Oh, here we go. Is a herb in the mint family. Which causes hallucinations. But may be very intense and frightening. Wow. One day, you think you're just trying to freshen your breath. Next thing you know, you're getting attacked by a dragon and shit. Mental. Why is my chat now full of psychedelics? Is this just because I do philosophy that everyone's just like, oh yeah, so I tried all these psychedelics. I think you'd be able to have logic, Noah, if you are born with no senses. It depends what you mean by no senses. If you because this is because if you include the reflection upon one's own ideas as a sense, which John Locke argues for, then you would be arguing that reason was a form of sense. I would say you could have logic and rational thinking, conceptualization without sense experience, but you would lack the content to conceptualize. It would be like the same thing could happen, I think, in terms of the other way around. You could have sense experience, but if you had no understanding, you'd have no way to behave in the world. So you have thought, but without content. Or at least it would be... No, actually, could you have thought without content? Could you have thought without content? No, because I think it would instantly fill its own content. It would have to. So there would either have to be thinking of something, be something of which it's thinking about, or a experience of thinking, and then that would be it. And I think an experience of thinking would just be experience. So if you were to include all experience as sense, like all intuition as sense, then I would probably say no, you couldn't have logic without sense. if you were to say that what you mean is, let's say, the five senses that, like, I know it's not five senses, but what people usually consider five senses, like, sight, hearing, taste, smell, that kind of thing, then yeah, you could. Like physical sensation. You could have logic without that, I would argue. I've never asked anyone. What are your thoughts on doxastic volunteer? I don't even know what that means, man. I go away for a week and people just start making words up. 1 second. Let's have a look. Philosophical view that people elect their own beliefs. That is, that subjects have a certain amount of control over what they believe, such as the subject may choose whether or not to believe a certain thing. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that we have. I mean, like, look, I would probably argue from like even an existential position that the act of thinking is a choice. Like, I mean, the contents of our thoughts, not necessarily our choice, and I think that's the lack of freedom that we have in terms of the conceptual scheme that we live in. But their act of thinking is a choice. I think that, and in terms of belief, I think belief implies something additional, like what you actually endorse to be true, rather than, or you endorse to be real. And I think we absolutely have the Gentiles, not genitals. Oh well, whatever, man. Right, I'm not trusting you, genitals, man. Sorry, I am sorry for misreading that. I'm putting myself through a Rorschach test. Oh my god. Okay. Oh god. What, in your opinion, are the top 3 books every person should read? Every person should read. So like, okay. Top 3 books every person should read. I would probably say that's actually really quite a tough question, like, when I think about it. Okay. I'd probably say either The Case for Animal Rights or Animal Liberation, for one. Either or, really. I'd probably agree with Regan more than I agree with Singer, but I think Animal Liberation's a brilliant book. So, yeah. Then I would say probably I'd probably say Plato's Gorgias or Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Actually, no, scrap that. I'll probably say something like The History of Ethics by Alistair MacIntyre, because I think it'll probably give the most value overall. And then for number 3, ooh, quite difficult, actually. I think Free Will and Continental Philosophy by David Rose is a really good one. just to show that individuals actually are responsible and can live, kind of responsible, ethical lives, rather than taking a deterministic understanding of themselves. So the first one is really just to outline our responsibility to animals. The second one is to give an understanding of ethics as a whole, from what I think is a pretty good outline of ethics from epoch to epoch, so that they gain a greater overall understanding of the concepts being conveyed. And then the last one is... Shit, what even was the last one? What did I even say? That's totally gone. Oh no. How did I even do this? How did I even just forget the last book? I've recommended, like, one of the most important things apparently for what did I say? So I said, shit, it was... Okay, so I've got... Oh my god, what was the first one? Oh my god. No. No. Okay, animal liberation, or the case for animal rights. A history of ethics by Alistair McIntyre, and shit, what was the last one, man? Oh no. I'm totally gone. Fuck. Okay, wait a minute. Think, Lewis. Oh no, what was the last one? Oh, right, yeah. Free Will and Determinism by... the Free Will and Continental Philosophy by David Rose. So people can't, like, sidescape the responsibilities. My god, that was difficult to remember. I don't know why, that just totally left me brain. Private language, no. I would say that Wittgenstein was right on that. Wow, that sounds like some strong shit. Salvia has been described as DMT's evil brother. My god, I thought DMT was just like the strongest. Because Nietzsche is best understood while high as fuck on psychedelics. Why? Because he also had no mind. I don't know if all philosophers must try psychedelics, man. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there's a risk involved that I don't mind taking like risks with myself. I suppose, like, if I drink and if I was to smoke weed, legally in Amsterdam, of course, then I can see that being a risk. And I have experienced negatives from both. And I really hate the people who are probably like potheads who are like, really into weed and that, and they're like, oh, but man, it's just medicine. It's got no negative consequences. As if like every drug in the world doesn't have some sort of side effects that negatively impact us. And it's actually, even for it to be medicinal, just means it has more positive, outcomes than bad. It's in fact just a perfect drug. It has no negative consequences. Don't worry about depression, addiction, anxiety. None of that. None of that's possible. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that like weed's a terrible drug or anything, and I certainly think that all drugs should be legalized anyway. But I think that it's just like, I think it's just so bullshit when, like, it's like, even the fact that, like, I've heard loads, oh, smoking weed doesn't give you cancer, but smoking weed does give you cancer because smoking gives you cancer, and smoke's bad for your lungs. It's like, even though that weed has anti-cancerous properties, it still gives you cancer. It still increases your likelihood of lung cancer. Not as much as tobacco, but it does. So no, smoking weed is bad for you. Vape it? Yeah, fair enough, whatever. That overcomes that problem for the most part. But then there are other issues, right? And I think that it's the same thing with alcohol, man. Like, no one would ever dare. I mean, alcohol's actually fairly bad for you, like, but no one would ever dare say like alcohol was not addictive, even though it's not chemically addictive, because there are just such a high number of alcoholics. How can someone speak authority on ethics? In other words, how can two people of very strongly contradictory opinions, I would say they would appeal to reason and justifications. And I think that the only thing that this has to bottom out and be grounded. I would say that's the only thing that could happen. We should reflect on our institutions and the grounding within our institutions, the reasons which exist within them, and then talk from that position on common ground. I think if we talk on two abstract moral positions, we're just going to be talking on a language game and never actually communicate with each other. So yeah. Any advice for an aspiring philosophy undergraduate writing a personal statement? God, I mean, it's been so long since I wrote my personal statement. Have a look at the course. See the modules. Like, so this is what I did. So I had a look at the universities that I was applying to and then wrote in my personal statement that I was really looking forward to parts of the course and referred to them by name. So the universities I applied to had one called one of its modules Our Place in the Universe, and another one called their module Metaphysics, but they talked about very similar things. So I said, I really look forward to understanding our place in the universe and analyzing metaphysics. So, things like that. Big yourself up. It is the time to big yourself up. Tell them that you watch my channel. Do I agree that life is nothing but a box of chocolates? Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I would really like to hope that I know what chocolates I'm getting before I buy it. I guess that's the issue. I know that. I'm sorry, Forrest. Me and you have a common debate partner. I debated anti-natalist Steve Godfrey. Oh, that's cool, man. Steve seems nice. Can I expand a bit more on the meaning of life? What? Okay. In terms of the expression of the subjectivity of the individual. Okay, I would say that all there exists is the individual, as in the self, in a universal, in universal terms, and so we are trying to expound upon the greatest expression of an individual's power to create a scenario from which they would find desirable. That would be, I would say, the meaning of life. Anyway, I hope that's out. Either or by Kierkegaard true? I would probably say not. I don't know. Like, it's got some great. Like, look, I love Either or. It's a great book, but I would side with Hegel over Kierkegaard. So his engagement, like moving from the ethical to the spiritual, I think misunderstands what the ethical is, which is combined with the spiritual. Which is why I think that like the spiritual is the abstract form of ethical life, which is embodied in the concrete subject. And I think that's what Kierkegaard doesn't get. Fellow Creatures by Christine Korsgaard. I'm still reading it, man. I've just started. How does determinism negate responsibility? Your actions come from you as an endpoint. We can still recognize a person as harmful under determinism. People can change too. Can still change too. Yeah, but like, look, like, I don't mean to be like fatalist about things, but I'm going to be fatalist about things. If everything was absolutely determined, your actions are determined. What will change your actions will be determined. Where my actions are coming from in relation to your actions will be determined. I don't have to, like, all ethics and responsibility is negated by determinism because we have no responsibility because if we act, we cannot act otherwise. That's the point. There is no ability to act otherwise. This entire discourse has been predetermined. Is it DMT? If one subscribes to panpsychism, does veganism become an aesthetic or behavioral position? That is, if matter is conscious involving, can we not epistemologically bracket pain to specific creatures? I think probably could still say that, like, what is conscious, like, to be a panpsychist, I think could accept that a rock doesn't feel pain. But argue that it is a fundamental simplistic consciousness, I think. I'd probably say so. Make your body into an amusement park, PP. I don't know about that, man. It's like saying not all biologists should learn to use a microscope. I don't think that. Look, modifying the phenomenal experience can give insight into the individual psyche, and I think that it could give insight into the conceptual foundations of reality. But one, I already know that reality is conceptual in origin. I already have information from existentialists who argue that. I can look upon the experience of other people who have taken these drugs and reflect upon it. And I can also use reason, right? I don't think that I need DMT to be a good philosopher. And there is the risk that I could become a much worse philosopher. Like, I know someone who took hallucinogens and stuff. Like, they started with weed, took hallucinogens, and then like kind of just lost that shit. And I know two people like that, right? And they're both psychotic. So like, I'm not saying it was the drugs, right? Because I believe it very well might have preceded the drug taking, and I would probably argue it almost certainly did. And has more to do with that ethical relationship with themselves and the reality around them, right? From like a Lacanian position, and that the drug taking is actually maybe a cry for help. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't think it aided the process. Charlie. Charlie. Hiya, vegan kids. How you doing? I've smoked so much weed, I'm a sage now. I like that. Oracle of Delphi. You just become the oracle. Cannabis gives me major paranoia. It's not for me. I think cannabis should be legal. But that's not pretend it has zero risk. I completely agree. I think like, look, at the end of the day, like, that is the way it is. Like, I think, don't get me wrong, I think even how you approach paranoia when you're high is like something that teaches you something about yourself. And I think it's something that we all have to learn, and I think we should learn how to approach our own incorrect faculties. Right? What happens when we're lying to ourselves? You know, how do you approach that? Bro, just look through the microscope, bro. YouTube is addictive. YouTube is addictive. PewDiePie was talking about that, wasn't he, actually? I was going to respond to PewDiePie because I think PewDiePie's reliance on stoicism is totally wrong. Do you think it's worth responding to PewDiePie on why he's not going to overcome his alcoholism with stoicism? I'd be like, you're wrong, PewDiePie. Alcoholism is only just one facet of a structure of addiction which has not been challenged within you, and stoicism will not provide the necessary psychic tools to undo to deconstruct the psyche which is causing your problem. You're focusing on an egoistical position rather than a holistic psychological position, which includes, let's say, your drives and your morality and the limitations that you're placing upon yourself. So yeah, that was just my little rant for PewDiePie. Yeah, psychedelics can be a stressor that brings a dominant mental illness. I don't think it's dormant. I think just stress in general. I do think you're right. Like, stress in general, how you cope with stress is basically, or how you cope with like truth and like reality is basically what determines like your psychic structure in Lacan. Like Lacan, Lacan. He genuinely, you know, if you're a neurotic because you repress, you're a psychotic because you foreclose, and you are perverse if you disavow. So yeah, I think that those stressful, like stress can bring like essentially force us to make a choice, and that choice is in and of itself reflective of the choices that have built up our psychic structures. And so when we fall into crisis, it's actually probably, I think it's a lot of the time, it's normally that there is that what was our coping mechanism has actually fell apart. So I have no idea how psychedelics interact with chronic anxiety. I definitely recommend talking to a doctor or doing some research. Both. Where am I reading this from, Alison? Yeah, Streamlabs chat. What affordable ways do you suggest for someone trying to go plant-based? For a full balanced diet, of course, not just for veggies, but affordable proteins, not impossible burgers. Okay, so it depends on where you live, West T, but check out TVP, right? You can get it dried. That's textured vegetable protein, cheap as chips, like cheaper than chips, unbelievably cheap if it's dried. Check out that. That can basically be a protein source. You can get cheap tofu. You can get use like soy milk is great for a protein source as well. What else? In terms of fats, healthy fats. I'm assuming you want like a healthy balanced diet. So if you want healthy fats, if you can afford nuts, get them. Nuts are great, especially things like walnuts, which have like a 1.1 to 1.4. Was it 1 to 4.3 ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s, which is almost perfect. If you can't afford things like nuts, then and things like avocados, then check out seeds. Seeds are really cheap, usually. Chia seeds, flax seeds or linseeds are really high in omega-3s. And hemp seeds also have a perfect balance between omega-3s and omega-6s again. In terms of like, and you can get like vegan protein supplements now. If you wanted, you can get like depending on your budget, I would recommend Viva Life. I think it's really good. It tastes nice, and it's heavy metal tested. What else? In terms of you can go to like, if you can go to like your local, let's say I wanted to go to, let's say Tesco. If I go to Tesco and I can go and get a bag of frozen vegan mints for like £1.73. So depending on how tight your budget is, you can get like a bag of vegan mints, which will last about I would say between about 3 to 4 meals. I would say that will like 3 to 4 meals like of a chili or something like that. So for £1.73, and then you can just add some beans and stuff, which are cheap. If you can't afford canned beans, then get dried beans and cook them yourself. But you will probably just be able to afford tin beans. Most people do that because it's a lot easier. I'm trying to think of anything else. Any kind of other tips to eat a healthy plant-based diet? Yeah, just break your macronutrients up first of all. Understanding where you're getting your macronutrients from. And in terms of micronutrients, the only things I'd be a little bit like on the lookout for are things like your omega-3s, where you're getting those. Your vitamin D, I would probably recommend supplementing in general, like whether you're a meat eater or whether you're a vegan. Everyone should really be supplementing vegan D3. I would recommend obviously get a vegan supplement for that. If you can't get it, and that in general, or if you just want to bolster your vitamin D, you can sun your mushrooms. So if you put mushrooms in front of a window, turn them upside down, and leave them for 24 hours, you'll get quite a large dose, 24 to 48 hours. You should get quite a large dose of vitamin D2, which will convert to D3. But again, D3 is better. Vitamin A, you can get that from sweet potatoes, carrots. It's absorbed better with fat. So if you want to increase the vitamin A in your diet through whatever beta carotene source you're going to eat it with something that's high fat. So like carrots and hummus is really good. In terms of protein, I wouldn't really worry too much about protein. I'd just say try and get enough of it, and let the rest solve itself. for the most part. I think if you are concerned about protein combining and you want a very balanced amino acid profile, you can get a 1.1 ratio on amino acids. That means like every single amino acid covered and more in terms of what would be a quite a standard level by eating beans and brown rice, and that can be really cheap. So what else is the K2? You get that from dark leafy greens. So consider eating things like cabbage or kale, which can be really cheap. Your B vitamins, should be really easy. If you really are struggling for them and you wanting to just get them easily, nutritional yeast or yeast extract. But like you, as a vegan, you're probably going to get more B vitamins than most meat eaters anyway. Just eat a balanced diet, man. Is there anything specifically that I can help with or that I need to expound upon? Determinism doesn't matter for accountability. The only thing that matters is that people can modify their behavior given incentives. People can modify their own behavior. If determinism's true, people cannot modify their behavior. Their behavior modifies irrespective of them. They are determined. I don't think most people understand determinism at this point. Got to go back to work. It's been fun. Thank you for popping by. As a Hegelian, do you have any thoughts on Deleuze? Not enough, because I haven't read a lot of Deleuze and Guattari, so I need to read like Anti-Oedipus, and I'll get back to you. Look, Noob Slayer, I get what you're saying. There probably would be somewhat of an enlightening experience if I did take psychedelics. But my taking psychedelics is has to be a rational decision. And I cannot foresee a good reason to take them at this time. Respond to PewDiePie. All right, I'll do it. I'll respond to PewDiePie. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't even say your name. I have no idea what you've just said to me there. The disexual relationship between the ribble nucleic philandering. What the fuck does that even mean? I want to understand that, and I want to Google it, but I also feel like I should never Google anything that you say, like regardless of your name not actually being genitals. PP, that's like saying I've read tons of. All right, okay, yeah, I get you. I don't have the right mind for any drug at this present moment. Lol. I know what you mean. Anxiety and psychedelics. I think that at the same time, that same mindset, like you're also telling yourself that you wouldn't be able to handle something, which, I mean, like I'm not like a psychoanalyst, so for the love of God, don't take what I say actually seriously. But it just seems that like you're already projecting your current levels of anxiety onto the next event when, like, if you were to tell yourself, I can cope and I will cope and I am coping, you're probably going to find that how you enter any situation is actually going to turn out better. PP love nuts. Ha 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 ha. I do actually. Nuts are actually great. Seeds taste much better than walnuts and pecans. One, you shut up about pecans, right? Pecans are amazing, right? And can be delicious if used correctly. Walnuts are unreal as well, actually. They've got a bitter taste to them, but genuinely, I've like an absolute secret here. Walnuts and nutritional yeast produce perhaps the nicest tasting thing I've ever had in my life. I love walnuts and nutritional yeast. Like, I sometimes just eat walnuts and nutritional yeast. Like, genuinely, eat some walnuts, pour nutritional yeast in my hand, and then eat the nutritional yeast. And then bask in the glory. That is, also be careful because you can choke, because it is very dry. So have a drink on hand. Don't throw the nutritional yeast to the back of your throat, because believe me, you can choke on it. And you don't want to find out, you don't want all of your friends and everyone knowing that not only did you die young, but you died young choking on walnuts and nutritional yeast as a vegan. That their vegan friend died choking on nuts. I will disavow you from the vegan movement if after this you die choking on nuts. Lentils are based. Yeah, orange food's basically for vitamin A. Absolutely. Quinoa's pretty cool. Yeah, B12 supplement. Absolutely. Always B12 supplement. All right. Okay. Well, I'm not going to lie. West T7, you want to check, like, if you go to the Discord server and you just check out recipes and stuff, or if you ask people who are from your region, they'll give you better advice. I don't know those brands, so I'm assuming that I'm from a different country. Yeah, complete amino acid profile. What do you think about the different theories of truth? I think that I'd probably put myself in. Look, I'll get back to you on that actually, because I'm currently fighting with myself. So yeah, we're not going to talk about truth because I'm currently doing epistemology and I'm going a bit mental with that. What are your thoughts on virtue ethics? Yeah, I mean, I like virtue ethics. I don't think it. I think that the virtuous. See, I think that I think it lacks. I think that, like, virtue is essential, but without duty is empty. Like, there is, like, being a virtuous individual and having positive engagements in the world can only be judged if we have an understanding of what are the right way of engaging with others and understanding life and how we ought to engage into what to create the good life. And in that, we start thinking about how we should create ourselves as agents. And that's where I would say virtue ethics comes in. Good to see you, man. Take it easy. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to buy followers. And that's fucking dumb. Why don't you just make yourself, why don't you make yourself foresee a good reason to take back? Where is the chat I'm reading from? What have I been up to? I've actually been doing some street interviews. I did some street interviews. I've got to edit. I've got a voice response to do. I've got quite a bit of work to do that I'm just sort of backlogged on, to be honest, at the minute. What about yourself? How are you doing? Yeah, I'm going to plan to stream some games. Plan to stream. That's the problem. I'm just eating random veggies and munching while listening to this now, lol. Productive programming. Well, no, it's pretty cool. As long as I can walk up to someone and say, don't steal, or the state will bonk you, and they respond with, dang, guess I won't steal, then I don't care about determinism. Well, then, don't, look, yeah, but that's not saying that it's not that's still like look, like that's not ethics. It could be purely descriptive. Like you could describe this purely like, I will walk up to someone, tell them that the state will do X, and they will respond with X. There is no right or wrong. This is what will always occur, and there is no subject-centered responsibility. It's like, right, great. Doesn't tell me anything about how we should engage in the future, because it's purely descriptive. Do you want to meet God? You can't sell hallucinogens to us with, do you want to meet God? Okay. Look, I get it. You're appealing to my dormant Christianity. And I'm not going to lie. There's something appealing. Maybe I will see the face of Christ. Maybe I will understand God. But I don't know if that's how that works. Yeah, the very fact that you're telling yourself you can't handle it would make it so much worse. Absolutely. I know, who's talking shit about pecans? That's... Macadamia nuts are not the best nut. That is fundamentally wrong. They're nice. I'm a fan of nuts. PP is a fan of nuts, but I'm not gonna let you say things about macadamia nuts being the best. I pour nutritional yeast down my throat all the time and then chug water. Absolutely. Based and walnut pilled. Absolutely. Death by nooch. Yeah, the news would totally eat that story. To die choking on nuts as a vegan is the way to go. No. It would be the worst for us. Like, it would be in the news, and it would be like, vegan dies eating nuts. Vegan gives nut challenge and kills young people. Nutty vegan dies again. I don't know, man. It would be terrible. Devos, we can get you off fish. We can do it. What's stopping you from giving up fish? How are lentils impossible for you to cook, Chaos? Is there anything... Is like, lentils are usually quite easy. I'm going to be having a... Iridescent, I'm going to be having a debate with... Hopefully with Vegan Gains and so on. So... We'll see how that goes. Like a 2v2. Mark, I haven't seen it yet, but Magnus told us about it, so I need to go and check it out. So I'll have to check out the Phil Papers survey. Pretty big win for the moral realists. Of course it was. What fucking idiot out here has a moral... Okay, sorry. I'm not going to say that because I do have friends who are moral subjectivists. But I can look smug. Right? I think anyone who doesn't accept ethical realism at this point simply has not done enough philosophy. At least I haven't done the right philosophy, actually. Yes. The filthy Wittgensteinians over there. Stop it. Are me and Destiny going to talk socialism? Absolutely not, because he'll never talk to me about socialism. Like, I've tried to call him out numerous times. He said he would debate us. Then he said that he wasn't interested in debating us. I don't know why we're going to debate socialist econ. And since he's really, the man loves economics, or at least he engages in economics a lot, and he'll engage other people in economics, but he won't engage me. I don't know why. He owes us nothing, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he owes us the conversation. He just said that he'd do it. So, Destiny, if you do see this, I am still game to debate. And if you ever want to debate socialism, just hit us up. Right, I'm back. Blah, blah, blah. What's that? I don't know what that says, Jax. Is that Misabaha? I don't know what that is. I need to come to Newcastle so we can cause a ruckus. Absolutely. We can do it at the university if you want. I'm planning on. I've been told that I can. Well, I was told that I could film in the university, so I'm planning on heading up there at some point. Some point soon, probably before the weather gets absolutely terrible, and no one will stop. That's the plan. What? Oh God, I hope you're responding to the socialism is made when you post on Twitter memes. I don't even know what that is, man. I went away for a week and I don't even know what's going on in the world. Macadamia nuts aren't the worst nut? No. What are the worst nuts? What is the worst nut? What does it mean to be a bad nut? I feel like all nuts are good nuts. Some nuts are misunderstood. And I think that's the main thing. Macadamia nuts are so good, but they are kind of bad for you. I imagine they've got some health positives as well. Just don't eat too many of them. Tide pods are not vegan. They are not healthy for you. Do not eat them. Yeah, man. Don't kill yourself. That would be ideal. London. It depends on what you're looking to see, really, in relation to moral realism. There's a few books I'd recommend. I think After Virtue by Alistair McIntyre. I say that like a million times. I like A Reader's Guide to the Philosophy of Right by David Rose. I think an interesting explanation or against moral, an interesting book arguing against moral subjectivism or against moral anti-realism or or for moral truth is a book called Knowing Moral Truth by Christopher Culp. That was interesting. It's an analytic philosopher. He is a Platonist. He does make arguments I wouldn't endorse, but he does concisely put forth the claims of the moral anti-realists and show in many ways why they're wrong. Some nuts are misunderstood. Perspective philosophy. Absolutely. Good for you for touching grass. Look, man, actually me touching grass. I was actually explaining to Laura that I don't understand why we say our tradition of understanding reality is so physically involved that we understand reality to be in touch with reality when we touch grass. But in truth, we are more in reality when we engage with each other. It's funny because you could be totally fucking out of it, but be walking barefoot through a jungle and you are still considered just because you're touching. I know that touching grass doesn't necessarily mean that. It means like getting in contact with what is the broader people and stuff like that. But it's just funny that we use such physical language. What's the best milk though? Soy milk. How could you even ask that question? It's Alpro's growing up milk. That's the best milk. That is just the best milk. If you're not drinking the milk that was made for like 3+-year-olds, then what are you even doing? Did you not even watch what was it actually? That's what I'm telling. Was it oh no, what is it? I breastfeed my boyfriend. Okay. No, that was actually horrible. So strange actually. It was such a strange experience. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like watching this and I was like, and people think Freud was wrong. Like people are like, oh, Freud, what a freak. And it's like, I'm just on TV. I breastfeed my boyfriend. Um, or at least Lacon was right. I think, anyways, right on many things. Vanilla soy milk is so good. Silk vanilla is very good. Yeah, I think I've had that actually, like the actual silk one. Yeah, but Alpro vanilla is really nice over here. Raisins are pretty cool. Are you sure what you said that killing an innocent for you to survive, let's say eating meat, is an ethical thing to do? If I kill you to eat you, if I'm starving, would it be ethical? If we were on a desert island and you could not do anything to satisfy your system of drives other than kill me, and there's no other way that you could get off the island, blah, 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 we both can't do it, it's you against me, and we're in a state of war, then yeah, I don't think, it's not ethical, it's quite the opposite. There is no ethics. Like, ethics require mutual recognition of each other's drives and equal consideration of each other's drives. If we cannot consider each other's drives, we are in a state of war. Yeah. We've just been put in a state of war. It's like, all right, well, there's one cup of water and there's two of you. Fight. You know, I'm sorry. It's you know, it's live or die. If you, whichever choice you make, you're both right and wrong. It's tragic. I'm glad you like my milk taste. Oat milk is not nicer. I'm sorry. Oat milk can be nice, and I don't mind some oat milks. I genuinely don't. Like, I genuinely don't mind oat milk. Sometimes, but, like, let's be honest. I almost never use oat milk. I think oat milk's overrated. I think I don't mind, like, so I don't mind Oatly. Oatly's okay. But soy milk is better. If I'm having a coffee and I'm not having soy milk, I'll probably go for almond because I think almond adds a nice flavor to some lattes. Hazelnut is an underappreciated milk, which has, I think, when it's nicely chilled, is like nice for a glass of milk, like a glass of hazelnut milk. A nice chilled glass of hazelnut milk is really quite nice. What else? Yeah, that's. I'm trying to think of what that milks. I mean, the chocolate milks and the vanilla milks and stuff, and are really delicious. Alpro's grown up milk's great. The protein milk from Alpro's actually really nice. I've got that because I'm actually, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm actually trying to lose weight and get in shape, and I'm determined. I'm going to be a good representative for veganism now. I'm going to be fucking hench if it fucking kills me. What is it? There's that Socrates quote, like, everyone should, for once in their life, see how beautiful they can be. That's me. I'm going to do that. Anyway, cashew milk is nice, but cashew milk is expensive. And it's also quite thick. I think cashew milk should be cut. Brazil nuts are nice, and Brazil nuts also, like, they're really nice, but you can have too many of them because of selenium. But they are good for selenium if you want it, and they also have they also lower your cholesterol. Faster than a statin drug, actually. You should have a stream watching, commenting on the Shelley Kagan versus William Lane Craig debate concerning whether morality can be objective without God. Kagan in good form. I'll have a check. Yeah, I'll have a check. What's your theory? What's your thoughts on the theory that Freud just had a really fit mom? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think if anything, the Freudian theory lends the opposite, right? He's had a really unbelievable father. Like, his father's just been class. His mom has been, like, he's wanted his mom's attention, but his dad is just class. And he's just always felt inadequate and wanted his dad to die. Maybe he just had really beautiful parents. And then, I don't know. Maybe it's possible. I still haven't seen Squid Game. Am I doing the wrong thing? I don't even know. There's a new Alpro milk which is supposed to taste like real milk. I don't even give a fuck. I don't even care about the taste of milk. I don't even know who genuine. If you've been vegan for more than, like, I don't know, a month, I think the idea of caring about the taste of milk just goes out the window. Like, I genuinely think that soy milk, like some of the soy, like I've got that protein soy milk or the Alpro like grown up milk, is tastier than cow's milk. Anyway, from what I remember, cow's milk was all right, but like its nutritional profile shit anyway. Like it tastes okay, but I think I've had better milks which are better for me. So why would I even want, like, even if it wasn't harming cows, I wouldn't want cow's milk. Does a mother have an obligation to her child such that she is required to donate her literal heart to them? I don't think so. I mean, like, die for their child. You mean, are we obligated to die for one another? I don't think they would be obligated to die for their child. I think that like almost goes beyond the call of duty. But to protect that child, you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, yeah, kind of difficult answer. I don't think they would actually be that obligated. No. Like, because even if it would work, which I don't think it would, even if it would work, it comes with a risk to the mother and the mother as well, and I don't think that would be justifiable. Vegan gains moment. Yeah, shredded PP, absolutely. I don't know, like I've also like I wanted to get like this is the thing. Like I want to get a neck tattoo as well. I want to get more tattoos in general. I want a neck tattoo. But then it also may make me look like a lunatic. Well, not really. So I wanted like a neck tattoo here. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to neck tattoo. But then I was talking to Laura and I was talking to like other people, and you know, people do discriminate against people with tattoos. And as much as I like it, am I making a mistake? I like to think that I'm not making a mistake and I don't give a fuck. But also, universities. Coconut milk. Coconut milk is like, you know what? Actually, you can get these little things that are made of like coconut cream. And they're like, they're these chocolate little puddings from the Coconut Collaborative. They're really nice. They are so nice, actually. They are unbelievable. And they have like a big one, which is like an arrow. And you can get them from Heron if you're from the Northeast sometimes. And they're like 69 pence for 4. Or like £1 for a big one. And it's so good. It's like, no, it's £1 for 4 of them, or £1 for a big one. And they're just so good, man. They're terrible for you. They're absolutely terrible for you, but that's so delicious. I do think that Christianity could be extended into vegan philosophy. And I was actually going to go to church. I was going to actually try and go to church yesterday because it was All Souls Day, and argue that animals are encapsulated in the concept of soul in a Christian approach. I'll probably do a video on it more, Bronson, at some point. But suffice it to say, I'd basically argue that animals have conscious awareness, that we are aware of that we ought to consider them as others, and so treat them with love and compassion through the Christian doctrine. So yeah, I would say I would definitely argue that Christians should be vegan. I would say that Jesus, if he was around today, would be vegan. You change your mind too much to get a tattoo. And I don't know, man. I love tattoos, and I think that would I get a glow in the dark tattoo? Probably not. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Yeah, I'm absolutely gonna go to church to debate Christians into veganism. What are you talking about? That's exactly where else am I gonna find them? I'm like, you know. I was going to church to argue. Absolutely. Why? Absolutely. Brands are the only cool form of body markings. You're absolutely wrong. That's disgusting. Why would you brand yourself? That's so painful and so unnecessarily risky. Nah, I definitely want to get a tattoo on my neck. I'm just going to get a tattoo on my neck. I don't even care what you all say. Stop it. Stop it. Stop trying to convince us otherwise. Foucauldian turtlenecks will protect you from the neck tattoo judgment. You're right, actually. I'll just rock up to any interview just with a turtleneck on. Hello. I just start talking. I'm trying to do a French accent. I wear turtleneck all the time. I can't even do a French accent. I'm totally fucked. What are my opinions on modesty, gluttony, or drunkenness? Drunkenness. I know you are raised Catholic, so what are your thoughts on that? So, I mean, I was raised Catholic, so drunkenness is fine. Otherwise, Ireland's gone, right, as a country, right? And let's be honest, I think if the Catholic Church isn't going to make a strong stand on that. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being drunken in moderation. Like, you can drink in moderation. I think gluttony. I do think there is a problem with gluttony. I think it's the inconsideration of others when you yourself, when you recognize that you have more to eat than you need and you're unwilling to feed others. I don't think it's necessarily about caloric consumption. I think it's more about the consideration of yourself in relationship to others. That's the problem with gluttony, and the propagation of those habits which could cause you harms. Modesty. I think, again, it's just about desire. And I think a lot of the time they were limited. I think that modesty was very much built around the limitations of sexual desire, because sexual desire has perhaps one of the largest, has one of the greatest propensities for being, for escalating and becoming perverse and detached from, perverse in the sense that it's detached from reality, like literally perverse. And I think that's probably why I think that sexual desire is probably so heavily regulated in terms of modesty. And a lot of that came out on women because they regulated male sexuality by regulating female, or like masculine sexuality by regulating feminine behavior and appearance. Stop. No. Okay, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. I'm gonna be going soon, by the way. I'll be going in the next 5 minutes or so. I'm drinking right now. I like beer. I'm not gonna lie. French accent. No, that's all I've got. That's all I've got. No, I know the French are gonna come for us now. It's okay. We're in a fishing row. I say no one gets the fish. I feel like I should step in. Vegan daddy needs to step in and tell everyone no one gets the fish. They're not yours. Stop trying to take the fish. You're all wrong. No one. You've been fighting too much, and look what you've done now. No one gets the fish. Really, possibly to change the food system to plant-based. Really, did they actually agree that in the in the COP 26? That'd be actually class, because I think that's the acknowledgement of climate animal agriculture as climate effects that we've been waiting for. So I'll definitely have to check that out. I do enjoy whiskey as well. Homeless engineer. I'm a big fan of whiskey. I was drinking, like, on my birthday, I was drinking like old fashions and stuff, and they're really nice. I was really enjoying it. But at the same time, I think beer, like, one, I don't need to do anything. I like that. I can just get a beer. It's less alcohol, but it's more heavy. So it has its, I don't know. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm just trying to have a chill drink and I'm not trying to get drunk, then I'm drinking beer. If I'm trying to get drunk, then I'm probably drinking whiskey. Being high is better than being drunk. Tit for tat, man. They have the ups and they both have the, like, I have some really great memories in Amsterdam. I have some really great memories of being drunk, but I also don't have as many bad memories waking up the next day from being high. And I'd say that's the big difference. Like, I've genuinely thought I was dying because I've drank too much. I will say this. I 100% believe, like, alcohol is far more dangerous than weed because, like there's times when I've been, like, projectile vomiting. Like, I've just been projectile vomiting from alcohol. I've never had that from weed. So, yeah. I'm not going to say that it's... I think it's safer. I think it's safer. Like, I mean, from the literature, it's actually safer as well. I'm trying to get into philosophy. What books would you recommend I read first? Well, this is a great stream for you to pop into just when... what books would I recommend first? I would recommend Plato. I'd recommend Plato first. So I'd recommend something like... I think I had it about. Plato's Protagoras. I would recommend Plato's Protagoras, Plato's Gorgias, and the Republic as your kind of introduction to philosophy. If you can, get Philosophy of the Classic Readings by Peter Fosel and David... I think it's David Cooper. I think it's David Cooper. That's really good. For the about millionth time, I have not done any hallucinogens, and I am not planning to. What do you think is the best critique against utilitarianism? I would say that the Hegelian critique against Kant is probably the best. That it's an empty formulation. That understanding what is actually the best consequences is precisely built into the reasons of what obligations. So, trying to find the best, trying to understand what is the what is our greatest obligation is an act of institutional progression through duty on duty. So we perform our duty, which is what we believe is going to bring around the greatest expression of subjectivity, but we find that not to be the case, and so our duty changes when we come into conflicts of duty. Act utilitarianism and so on doesn't allow that. It's too abstract. I would say that it's abstract to the point in which it's an empty formulation. Do the greatest good for the greatest number. I have no idea what that means. I don't know what that means in my life. I think alcohol is very addictive too. I think people who don't understand weed, I think that's it's addictive. I think that's just, people are just gonna have to accept that. Do you think that parents have an obligation to their biological children? I think parents have an obligation to their children in general, whether biological or not. I don't care if it was an accidental birth or not. I don't see what the point is. Why does an accident negate one's responsibility to the other? I don't... just because you accidentally had a kid doesn't mean you can bash it over the head with a hammer. I don't know. That's quite obvious. If I accidentally bump into someone in the street, it doesn't mean that they're entitled to, I don't know, break me legs or something. What do I think of error theory? I think error theory only applies to a very small branch of philosophy from which no one actually argues with, right? So error theory is only applicable to, let's say, a non-naturalist notion of morality and ethics, usually from, let's say, a physicalist standpoint. And I was even talking to Dave about this. I think we both agree that it doesn't apply to idealism at all. It just doesn't apply. Error theory doesn't... It's to be entirely honest with you, I think error theory is probably one of the worst arguments against moral realism in general. What do you think that if 51% of the human population was vegan, that the police should protect animals by force if necessary? Absolutely. I think that if we ramify it in law, and we'll put in animal rights laws, then absolutely. All right, so it's kind of like a tentative thing, iridescent, which is kind of annoying because it needs to be really. If it's not said, it's not said. Like, you know what I mean? They need to say it, otherwise, it's not going to happen. Yeah, absolutely. There is parent-specific obligations to whether the child was accidental or not, if they're dependent upon you. Yeah, absolutely. What about stepchildren, like over the age of 18? Where are you going with this, Noob Slayer? But yeah, I'd say, like, if you consider yourself that parent, like whether you're a step parent or not, if you're the parent, they understand you as a parent, and you're engaged in the institution of the family, then you're a family. You have the obligations to them, in that respect. How a parent engages with what is now an adult shouldn't be in the same. Like, I think Eric Fromm talks about this in terms of the movement from parental love to brotherly love. You have to be able to parental love and what he calls maternal love has to nurture a child so that they become independent. So it's a dependent and who you've taught to be independent, and you have to be able to let them go and make their own decisions, which he thinks most parents fail at. And it should for parental love to manifest in a healthy way and to be genuinely maintained as love, it has to become brotherly love. It has to become a state of mutual family relation. Yeah, but that's what addiction is. Like, coping is where addiction comes from, Mr. Laugh. Like, no one wakes up one day and takes crack because they're happy, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether, like, it does matter if it's chemically addictive or not. Don't get me wrong. But addiction isn't about chemicals. Addiction's about psychological structures that pre-exist even the taking of the substance. The substance was the coping mechanism. It's just the expression of the addiction, which is why you can go from being addicted to drugs, to sex, to gambling, to whatever, because it's a structure of addiction. Gun to your head, you have to defend a Vosh take. What do you defend? Market socialism is right. That was easy. There we go. Would you ever run for a political office? I'd thought about that, but then I wouldn't be able to get the neck tattoo. And then that's not, I mean, I would do it, but like, look, I don't know if I'm corrupt enough to be a politician, right? I kind of hate politicians. Do or do not. There is no try. Absolutely, absolutely, Jedi Dick Sensei. Why do I think you're Joel? Are you Joel? You're absolutely right though. Like the trying is really just is to just do something, but not have actually fulfilled the task. So it is just the act of doing, really. Alcohol's definitely addictive, yeah. I'm addicted to philosophy, hopefully. Prime Minister PP, absolutely. About utilitarianism, it was such a Harvard lecture on YouTube about utilitarianism. The first two parts is so clear. Yeah, sure. If you want us to. Do you think that functional addiction is fine? No. No, I don't think just because you can function in life in the sense that you can function with like social scenarios doesn't necessarily mean that you are functioning correctly or appropriately for your own life, for your own well-being. I think often what would count as functional addiction is just, are you maintaining a certain social performance? Are you living to a standard which other people are happy to see you living to, rather than are you living a good life? I think that the problem with addiction is the addiction. It's not the actual indulgence. It's the feeling that you need to indulge in something to be okay, which shows that there is don't get me wrong, I think we all have a lack in like Lacanian terms, actually in Hegelian terms, and I would say that Lacan's definitely stolen that, but we all have a lack that we are trying to fill. But addiction comes around in terms of a structure of addiction when we are essentially dependent upon coping mechanisms, just to see through the day. And I think that's not healthy for people. I would also have to speak in an understandable way to a non-philosophically inclined population that you're a politician. What are you talking about? I'd just drink a pint and I'd be like, I'm one of the lads. And what are you talking about? Talk to the population. You're talking about. Don't be silly. We're on the ship of the mad sun. You know, like they're gonna cast the captain off the ship, and I'm just gonna offer them a pint. And I'm, hey, we're going that way. No. I think like you can't get through to the population. I think Jeremy Corbyn did a good job. I think that the problem is that you'd fight against all of the papers and stuff, but like with independent media. Right, but if you'd ever used cocaine, you would understand the difference. The way you start justifying nonsense to yourself is what makes it able to destroy a well-adjusted person. Well, I mean that depends, right? Like, so like how you actually engage with, so like how you engage. I agree. How you explain nonsense to yourself is what destroys you, but it's how you are doing that defines how the addiction's structured, right? Like, so if you are like, that's the whole point of like, look, like in the, I mean, I could be wrong in this, but like, the Lacanian position is that if you've got a neurotic, a psychotic, and a perverse individual, that they are all going to justify nonsense to themselves in very different ways. One is simply going to repress the wrong, like the memory of doing it. They're like, oh, whatever. They're going to repress it. They'll break free. They'll do all this crazy shit in maybe an act of hysteria, and then they'll repress doing it, and then they'll do it over and over again, right? A psychotic will tell themselves it's not so bad, right? Oh, don't worry, cocaine's it's not that bad for you, right? A perverse person will tell themselves a fiction about it. They'll convince themselves that they're not doing it, that what they're doing isn't as bad as they think that it is, and they'll tell themselves like a story separate from reality. And that's really like what defines like the structures of the psyche for like a Lacan, for like a Lacanian. Lacan. So yeah, like I think that's the point. Like the addictive structure that exists within the individual needs to be deconstructed and understood so that the individual can take control of their own actions. It's the lack of autonomy, the inability to relinquish something, to have lost yourself, would be the pain of addiction. That's what it is, fundamentally. Gun to your head, you have to defend a destiny take. Shit. Shit, what does Destiny even say? Apart from, like, I'm trying to think of some of his conclusions. Shit. I can't even remember a Destiny take off the top of my head. Shit. I've just read that as I said. Have you experienced brain fog? Fuck. I have, but I think that has a lot to do with my sleeping pattern. But anyway, one second. I'm trying to think of a good Destiny take. Like, what is, like, I'm trying to think of any Destiny take. I mean, his position, last time I talked to him, his position on gender seemed reasonable from our conversation. Like me, him, and Rem. I think we're agreeing on that. And I mean, Destiny's a reasonable guy. But again, it's like, I think I prefer Destiny's working out. I think that he actually reasons better than Vosh. But his conclusions, I don't agree with. So, like, I think Vosh is right by accident. Right? I think that Vosh doesn't understand half the shit he's talking about. And he just kind of, he's like, oh, that sounds good. I'm going to argue for that inductively. Destiny's more deductive, but his conclusions are shit. I like your Destiny, but I think we disagree on a lot. Morality and ethics, economics, like quite a bit. What would I say the underlying reason to do ethics is? The possibility of living a good life, or just genuinely the expression of value. Like, ethics is what allows us to engage rationally to obtain any given end, to even understand what ends are and what they ought to be. Like, ethics is the study of what is good, bad, right, and wrong. So what would I say was the value of studying ethics? To even answer that question, I'm going to have to study ethics. That's how fundamental ethics is. It's not something that we can choose to not participate in. It's something that we require. If you say like academically versus, let's say, like in your ordinary life where you'll engage with ethics, I would say that you gain insight into, let's say, the power structures that exist around you, reasons for actions, and understanding your institutions and why certain the spirit behind things like the law and the structures of right which have pre-existed your birth, so that you can find your place within it, and you can rationalize and progress society in a way which is genuinely beneficial, rather than dogmatic and irrational. How would you define using someone as a mere means to an end rather than end in themselves? What is the ethical way to treat the waiter? Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly the movement from Kant to Hegel. So using an individual as a means to an end, it's like, I would agree, that's exploitation. But what is that? And I would say, what is their interests? Am I considering them? So I have to understand what they are, who they are, the social context, and whether their ends are being respected, whether their interests are being respected, what they consider to be, or what is considered to be a good life. Are they being treated fairly as an equal? Justice, is it being done? That is what we are talking about. So it's like, am I paying someone for their work? We know that's unjust if I'm not, right? If I'm not paying my editor, for example, I'm doing something wrong because an editor doing work is entitled to the product of their labor, and the product of their labor, if it has a market value and is obtaining and is being sold for a market value, then their labor is not being respected. Unless there's like, I don't know, like there's some sort of like contract or something like that, again, in some other form of compensation other than monetary. But like, the scenario should be pay your editor, right? You know, that's respecting their labor and themselves, their interests. And we know that because we know people, let's say, need money to survive. We know that individuals own the product of their labor, and by not respecting that, we're not treating them as a equal individual capable of owning their own property, and have instead taken their property tyrannically, which is essentially not considering them as equal to yourself, or as a property owner, or a rational agent. So, like, yeah, in terms of, let's say, how should we ethically treat other individuals, I think that we need to understand the contextual obligations we have within our institutions. I think they are taught to us socio-politically. Like, I understand that I should tip the waiter. I should be polite to the waiter. I understand that the like certain social obligations are imposed in order to create a fair and just experience between me and a waiter. And that's how I would say we don't use them as a mere means to an end. The issue is when that institution is inadequate itself. And I think that can only be discovered through doing things like ethics, or even actually being a waiter. I think the experience of the waiter is what gives us the real indication that something is wrong, and understanding it from the waiter's position. The waiter is being exploited by the corporation, or so on. But I mean, let's say like they're not being exploited by someone else. and that the scenario is fair, then you just treat them as another individual who has feelings, who has rights which are embodied in the state, and you respect them. You engage in the social scenario in a way which is appropriate, and you you do what you can to make sure that you don't actively cause them harm. And it'd be nice if you are nice too, I suppose. Is morning coffee a functional addiction? Abso-fucking-lutely. If that 100%. The chemically addictive difference between things like cocaine. I don't think, is cocaine chemically addictive? I thought cocaine was psychologically addictive. I didn't think it was chemically addictive. I think you become dependent upon cocaine, but I didn't think you become chemically addicted to cocaine. Like your body becomes like used to like higher levels of serotonin and stuff, right? But I don't think it actually gets addicted. Am I wrong? You can't really be like the Hegelian lack. Yes, I can. Yeah, you can't just know that you are addicted. Like, it's horrible to realize that you're addicted to something. I think PewDiePie just talked about that, which I thought was really great. I thought it was really great that he talked about that. I don't think waiting tables is all that bad, man. Like, you could be a waiter and genuinely, like, offering people, like, for example, my grandmother really loved being like a hostess, like serving food and stuff like that. Our dream was to have our own restaurant and stuff. So I think if you were like a mutual owner of, let's say, a cooperative, and you really loved waiting the tables, I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with that at all. You like bringing people like a nice experience and you're not being exploited. I have no problem with that. There's nothing wrong. Like, I hate the idea of like the demonization of like what menial work. I think that it's usually the work that's most like essential or most valuable to our lives. I genuinely think that like good customer service, for example, is incredible. It genuinely makes an experience much more valuable. I would pay more for good customer service. And if a worker cooperative offered better customer service than another worker cooperative, then I'm probably going to go to that one. Do you know what I mean? So I don't see a problem there. I don't know. That was really well said, George. The pervert chases the pure. I can't say that word for the jouissance. The psychotic banishes the castrating signifier, and the neurotic displaces the problem. Yeah. Vosh is bad. Destiny's best take. Probably right. Destiny's wrong. I love sparkling water. That is actually wrong. Sparkling water is great. Destiny's too much of an Anglo philosophically. Yeah, but so's everyone. I mean, it depends. Like, I hate the whole Anglosphere fucking terminology anyway, because it's kind of half broke down. Like, I was like talking to people. I was talking to a university in like I was talking like I'm not actually mentioning university names, but I was talking to universities all around the UK where there's like continental philosophers. Not many that can do what I want. And don't get me wrong, Britain is still overwhelmingly analytic. But of recent years, I think that it's broken down a lot. Like people researching German romanticism and stuff in universities in the UK now. So it's way better than it was. I think that the bridge is definitely coming down. I think a lot of people, I will say this, right? And don't get me wrong, I think a continental approach, like I went to universities which were incredibly continental. like especially like Newcastle, was incredibly continental. And I've researched almost exclusively on continental philosophy. So, like, I will say that I think that a lot of people want to, like, for example, Has. Oh, thank you for the donation, Hound. One second, I'll get onto that. So I think like Has talks about like you know British Anglo-American Anglo-American philosophers as if they're terrible, right? They're not all bad, right? They actually do come up with some pretty, like Peter Geach. I found his work on the philosophy of mind really interesting, like it genuinely interesting. As a Hegelian, I'm like, wow, that's actually a really good piece. That's like really great. I think he knows what he's talking about. There are people in the Anglo-American tradition which come to good conclusions, which think in a way which is very, developed and nuanced, and is alike the continental tradition. They're coming to some of the same conclusions, using some of the same methodology. And there's people who are reading and writing in the Anglo-American tradition, who I'm about to mention, for example, who are trained in the continental tradition. But I think like the way Has was using it, he's like, wow, I mentioned David Rose. And he was like, that sounds like a very Anglo name. As if the type of philosopher you are is determined by your name. Right? And I think that's just appalling. I think the guy doesn't understand what the fuck he's talking about. There are some amazing continental philosophers that are like American and British. And that's just stupid to think that you just because you're English speaking. I mean, there's like, for example, Dr. Sadler on YouTube, right? I'm pretty sure he's American, who knows way more Hegel than Has, right? He's doing a course on like specifically breaking down every single paragraph of the phenomenology of spirit. And he's American. Do you know what I mean? So it's just this idea that like this sort of like I don't know, this desire to try and make like, to belittle a class of others so that you can kind of establish yourself. I mean, I think that screams narcissism in many ways. But I think that you're probably right in that destiny is very much like, I think that this is it, right? I think most of Anglo-American philosophy is Humean and hasn't become Kantian and like continental, but there is some. And like, for example, Robert Brandom, like as in Hound Reports, you just ask why you're reading Pierce and Dewey, and it seems pretty good. Why shouldn't you take the American pragmatism pill? I'd suggest reading Alistair McIntyre and Robert Brandom. I think Robert Brandom's recently actually done a video on YouTube, which is titled, I think, From American Pragmatism Back to Idealism. Like, essentially building to the point in which he shows that pragmatism is actually leading us back to idealism. So yeah, that's about the best. I think that's probably the best thing I could do to respond to that, is just point you in that direction. Hound Reports. And maybe in the future I'll do like a breakdown after I've read a bit more pragmatism, and I'll break it down on why I would say no for pragmatism. But I know that Alistair McIntyre had a good critique against it in After Virtue, but then also showed that it's half right. I think from my engagement with pragmatism, it's like half right. So I'm not saying don't become a pragmatist. I'm saying that I don't think that it explains everything. But at the minute, I'm also really struggling with truth and epistemology. So I'll get back to everyone after I work out what my epistemological position actually ends up being. Oh no, where's his beard? What's wrong with my lack of beard, man? I'm drinking sparkling water right now. Bougie. What's wrong with my lack of beard? Look is undeniable. Oh, Fortuna. You are so far back in the chat, PP. Keep up. It doesn't seem like I'm that far back in the chat. Fuck. Stream's hella delayed for you. Oh man, sorry. I don't know what's doing that. Do you want us to like? I'll just try reading. Yeah, Haz does claim that he mastered Hegelians. Haz did not master Hegel at the age of 19 because Haz hasn't mastered Hegel now. Like, I don't mean to sound bad, right? But like, if I had went into a conversation with a university professor, I would have been schooled, man. I would have been like, they would have sat me down, put a little hat on us, and told us, like, look, I get it, right? You're trying. It's okay. But this is why you're wrong about everything, right? But he couldn't do that because he doesn't master Hegel. Like, I genuinely, like I genuinely think that the issue is, right? The issue is that I think he thinks he's mastered Hegel, right? I think he's probably read some reader's guides and secondary literature, and he's read secondary literature, right? That's what I think he's done. And I think he just takes what they've said as mastering Hegel, whilst that's not mastering Hegel. I wouldn't even say you could master... If I'm entirely honest, I don't even know if you can master Hegel without having read Plato, Aristotle, know anything about the problem of universals, and you know, ancient and medieval metaphysics as a whole, and the philosophy which led up to Hegel, understanding maybe some Schelling, some Fichte, some Kant, mastering Kant, maybe. Like, you're not, maybe not mastering, but like being very proficient in Kant and having all of that, then understanding Hegel, then you might have mastered Hegel. Truly mastering Hegel is like it's you like, academics spend their whole lives writing books on Hegel. This guy is absolutely mental if he thinks he's mastered Hegel. Like, mental. Like, just totally mental. Like, he would be giving lectures explaining the variations of interpretation of the original German if he'd mastered Hegel. And I don't think he can do that. So no, he's not mastered Hegel. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think, like, to master Hegel in the proper sense, you need to get to the end of history. Kind of, to be entirely honest with you, absolutely. Because, like, Hegel is setting out what is a formal philosophy which he believes is going to develop, which he basically says in The Science of Logic. I do not accept the idea that Hegel believed he was the last philosopher, because I don't think he did. He said that the child of the next generation is better than the genius of this one. So, like, I think Hegel knew that. Thank you for the donation. You're a smart fella and I like you. Buy yourself some soy milk. Thanks, Mr. Laugh. I really appreciate that. I will buy myself some soy milk. Well, this is the thing. I think, and then he goes on and he says, like, Marx destroyed philosophy, right? So he thinks that Hegel completed philosophy and then Marx has destroyed it. But then hasn't even, I've never heard him once engage with Heidegger's response to Marx, having said that it was the death of philosophy. So Heidegger just argues essentially that is in and of itself a philosophical argument, and that before we can even, what does he say? Before we can even change society, we have to evaluate it and understand it. So the act of revolution is a philosophical endeavor. So I don't know. I think that, like, I don't know. I think Haz some real ego issues. That's what Haz has. Haz has some real fucking ego issues. And you know what? Like, I can't even say I give a fuck. Like, I know that sounds bad, right? But like that man is heading for a straight up fucking crisis. And I don't think I give a shit. Like, cause he's such a dick. I mean, I care in the sense I'm like obligated to care about like everyone, kind of, but I don't really care. Probably a duplicate question, but could you recommend a good entry philosophy book? Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the donation. I think I said one before, so I'd say like just entering philosophy as a whole. I think Plato is a really great starting point. So things like Gorgias, Protagoras, and the Republic, really good for starting philosophy in general. It'll get you used to dialogue. It's a dialogue. It doesn't use complex vocabulary. It's easy to understand, and it should. And it's the building block for all Western philosophy, really. If you can pick up a book called Classic Philosophy, the Classic Readings, really great book. I really thought it was probably the best, like sort of beginner's entry into philosophy as a whole. It has like every philosopher, like for like the last 2,000 years, or like the primary philosophers for the last 2,000 years, of multiple traditions as well. Even includes some like Eastern philosophers. So that's pretty cool. Anything else? Trying to think of a good book to entry into philosophy. Yeah, I would say just start with Plato. Just start with Plato. I think it's the best place to start. He thinks that when Marx said he was a materialist, he meant he was a Heideggerian. What do you mean by that? How does that even make sense? What's the problem? Wait a minute. What's the problem with the hypothetical, idealized, one bad day animal agriculture? I don't know what that's supposed to mean, Jacob. Could you rephrase? Sorry. Just want to say you're my favorite YouTube political streamer, and I want you to see you destroy Vosh again, but you never take the bait after the last time. Lol. Oh, thank you, man. Well, I'm gonna offer to debate him on utilitarianism because I don't think he understands it at all. Has. Absolutely. Well, actually, that's quite the opposite. Actually, homeless engineers. I think hasn't got has, and has needs to find has for to find any real resolution with himself or with has. I hate the authoritarianness of the MLs, man. Of all of them, I hate it. Like this idea, like I think it runs counter to Marx anyway. I genuinely do. The individual freedom is the ruling principle. I think that like that's only possible in a democratic environment. I don't think that it's possible in terms of an authoritarian government. Yeah, I think he's very insecure too. Infrared is a persona that will break eventually. And Has will either be shattered or become a man. Yeah, I probably agree with you, Mr. Laugh, to be entirely honest with you. I think that's essentially it. I think he's going to have to either come to terms with himself that he's not this fantasy self that he's trying to make himself into, or he'll crumble and collapse and disperse into essentially a very not okay guy. I think that this is a very big cope. And I think everyone can see that it's a big cope. And you know what? I would give a fuck if he wasn't such a dick. If I'm not too well read in philosophy, is it a bad idea to jump into Hegel's lectures on the philosophy of history? Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, if you can do it, I mean, if you read it, yeah, fair enough, I guess. But like, I'd suggest getting get some philosophy down your neck before you pick up Hegel. I would even recommend picking up something about Hegel before reading Hegel. Like, even like Norman's Guide to the Phenomenology of Spirit, or Singer's Brief Introduction to Hegel, something like that, just a brief explanation of what you're actually reading. Or to be entirely honest with you, I would say like you need an understanding of philosophy as a whole, really, or a little bit before you like what empiricism is, rationalism, things like the difference between a priori and a posteriori, a priori synthetic. Like things like that. You're not going to understand anything that's going on if you don't understand what he's responding to. He's writing it towards academics. Hegel's not writing it towards normal people. He didn't actually consider a single normal. I am convinced that Hegel did not consider a single normal person when he was writing his work. Like, he didn't think of one normal German ever picking up his book and reading it. Not once. Like, not in any of the books did he think, you know what? What if a normal person tried to read this? Not once. Not at all. He believes in Lamarckian evolution. What is Lamarckian evolution? I haven't heard that. A theory of evolution based on the principle of physical changes in organisms during their lifetime. Oh, wait a minute. Is this the whole thing where if like a giraffe stretches its neck, it'll eventually... Isn't that was like, in many ways, isn't that like sort of tied to epigenetics and stuff? I mean, it seems a bit far-fetched. I wouldn't say that it's actually true. I mean, I guess like the only thing I could argue for is that like there could be information passed on through epigenetics, but I don't think that's the same thing as Lamarckian evolution. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. It seems a bit weird. Like, it seems a bit weird. How about Destiny? Do I feel that he understands it? What understands what? I don't think he understands like philosophy entirely, but I think he's okay. Like, I think Destiny's a rational guy. I think he's quite smart. I think he often chooses not to believe in certain things. Like I said to him, like I convinced him in our debate. He said like he was convinced that that he wasn't actually a social contract theorist, but then said, but I'm still going to call myself one. So one bad day, as in an animal lives a good life, and then at an old age is killed as painlessly as possible. Oh, right. I think that's still using an individual as a means to an end. Like, why are you giving them that bad day? Like, you're treating their entire life is a means to obtaining human satisfaction. Grow a philosopher beard. I know, I need to grow a beard again. Is it that bad? I shave once, right? And then everyone's like, fuck, why do you look so shit? PP, your kids are going to inherit your tattoos, lol. Exactly. They're going to, you know what? I would definitely do it. I'd have like the coolest tattooed baby. Are you a participant in No Nut November? That's just, that escalated. No, I'm not a participant in No Nut November. Is that actually like a charity thing or something? Or is it just like for the no fat people? You've got to be abstinent as well. You can't even just like, it's not even no fap. It's just abstinence. Why? But why? Originally intended to be some participant clean abstaining from yeah, okay, I can agree that abstaining from watching porn and stuff has healthy effects. Like, I think that's probably true. Destroy Dick December. What is wrong with the internet, man? What the fuck is wrong? We've just went too far. He sees the Marxian view of man's relation to matter is analogous to the Heideggerian idea of objects defined through an existential relationship. No, I probably would very much disagree with that. I do think that Marx is like, although he's not a stupid materialist though. Like he understands that material's been conditioned. I don't think he's anywhere near a Heideggerian in that though. It depends on how analogous he sees it, George. That's the issue. Because like, is it like a strong analogy? Who admitted that he was an incel? If you're talking about Haz and Haz used to be an incel, I could genuinely believe that because it's the whole thing, isn't it? Right? The incels become the pickup artists, which are actually still incels who take steroids or like use cheesy ways to try and impress like women and are proper simps. That I could believe that. Like, bless the. You know what the thing is with incels? Actually, God bless incels, man. Like, I think that it's just like they've fallen down like an absolute rabbit hole. Like they've just lost grip with reality because they're just so like their egos are just destroyed, isn't it? Like they've got no validation. They feel totally unrecognized. And they're starting to say like what is it? 1/3 of men are now under the age of 29 are now basically involuntarily celibate, so like are virgins and stuff. So that's pretty bleak, man. That is pretty 1/3. Can you guys believe that? Like, there's a lot of MLs that are also transphobic. I haven't really seen. I mean, I don't engage with the ML community except for when they're calling us an eco-fascist. Oh yeah, MLs and fascists are like that. It's weird, man. They're either like you get people who flip-flop between being a fascist and a Marxist-Leninist, and I know it sounds stupid, but I've seen like loads of Twitter accounts like that, and I think it's because they're attracted to the authoritarianness. It has nothing to do with anything else. Did I see your clarification? No, I didn't. I don't think I did. Why did Hegel become so popular during his life? Well, Hegel didn't become popular until later years, did he? I think Hegel was only accepted at a much later time. I'm trying to remember like Hegel's biography now. Because I think he was like a high school teacher or whatever for like a canny while, and then moved to like headmaster, and then entered a university, and then very quickly rose to dean. So I think he became popular because I think he's supposed to be an amazing lecturer. Like Hegel's supposed to be like his written work is supposed to be nothing compared to the lectures he could give. Apparently his lectures were brilliant. Wine or beard. I just like actually like, do you know how I don't have a beard? So I went to the barber to get my beard done, and then she totally fucked it up. Like she totally fucked it up. Like as in I don't know how she did it. Like I said, like I was like this. I was like, put the line in. Like I showed her where to put the line in, right? I'm like, I'm doing it totally wrong because I'm like, why am I looking at there when I can just do this? Okay. So I tell her to put the line in, right? So it's like that way, right? Just I know where the line is. But then, and I tell her to clean this up, right? That's fine. So what she does, she's like, oh yeah, don't worry, I know what you mean. And I've tried to explain it a few times to her. And I've said like, I want it like, sharp. I was like, what someone once described it as Spartan warrior. I was like, just like, I want this line to come straight down like that to me mouth, right? She's like, okay. So she basically just scoops out me cheeks entirely. Like, I mean, totally. So it's like, right? And I've got these like patches where my cheeks are. And I was just so flabbergasted that someone could actually be so well. To be entirely honest with you, I think just I want to say rude. Like you mustn't have listened to a thing I've said to do that. And so I end up waiting. Like I'm mad. I'm going to go and do some filming. So I get this I get this trimmed down a bit. Oh no, that's the thing. So I go to the barber. He trims this down a bit, but doesn't trim it down enough. And he puts the right line in. And this has started to grow back. And so I was like, okay, this looks a bit better. But then I saw myself on camera, and you can still just see these giant gaping holes where she had trimmed so low that like they're just gappy and horrible. And it's the place which takes us the longest to grow. Like if anyone like who grows a beard, you know that the different parts of your beard grow at different speeds. My cheeks are the slowest part to fill in. They do fill in now. It's only taken 27 years. Well, I think probably 26 years. I probably could do it then. But it took 26 years to get to this point. And it takes us a good couple of weeks to get them to fill in. So essentially, I just like I looked at myself and I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to like trim this all down so that this is equal. And then I didn't have any. This is a really long story, but I didn't have any. I didn't have the right size clipper attachment, so I ended up just having to make it all the same size. It was just like, yeah. So this is why I don't have a beard anymore. What's wrong with the no beard anyway? What's wrong with my face? Life is one big addiction. Am I right, boys? Insert random Schopenhauer emoji. Okay, guys. I think I'm gonna... You look great with and without the beard. Thanks, Wicked Energy. I appreciate that. Okay, guys. I think I'm gonna call it now. I don't think Marx was a proto-Heideggerian. I think that's totally wrong. Like Heidegger was mostly inspired by Kierkegaard. Like, I'm sorry, I genuinely think Heidegger come from Kierkegaard. Right? Like Kierkegaard and Hegel. I do actually think Heidegger was inspired by Hegel as well. But that's because I maybe through Kierkegaard more. But I do think Heidegger was very much inspired by Kierkegaard. Talking about all sorts of nuts during November of all months. Okay, that's it. PP is secretly the undoing of us all sincerely and righteous brothers. He is the ultimate postmodern neo-Marxist Sophie boy. You know, absolutely right. That's exactly it. It's all been a big ploy. It's why I shaved. I'm actually destroying masculinity one step at a time. Get off Twitter and you might meet real MLs. I look, I've met some like I met real Marxists, right? Like I've met real Marxists who I'm like, these are cool people. These are fine, right? And like people with insane knowledge. It's as soon as it becomes violently revolutionary that we usually have a problem. Wow, is that true, Mr. Laugh? I'll have to look that up. About 40% of men have children, or 80% of women. Wow. It's tiresome to dance like a monkey for the possibility of human contact, so I found other ways to cope. What? Okay, guys, I think I'm going to bounce. When am I going to make counterpoints of vegan? Actually, yeah, I'm gonna message him about another conversation soon. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, so I'm gonna bounce, guys. Thank you, everyone who's supported the stream by donating. It's really appreciated. It helps us cover the costs of things like to go and talk to people and stuff like that. So that's really appreciated. I think I mean like actually go to places to interview people, which I've just done, and that video will be coming soon. Thank you to all my patrons on Patreon for supporting this stream. It is really appreciated, especially the gold soul patrons. I could not appreciate you enough. And Ben, I will make sure that you get obviously the content that is to come because of how often you've supported the channel. And to all of you who just subscribe and comment and leave questions and stuff, thank you as well. I really do appreciate it. Please consider subscribing. Excuse me. Please consider subscribing, like the stream, and as always, try to gain some perspective.